Right, karibuni tena ndani ya One Mic Show. Welcome back to the One Mic Show. Na ni furaha kujiunga nanyi wapenzi wasikilizaji, tukiwa tumekuandalia taarifa za kusisimua, muziki wa kata viungo na kindumbwe cha siasa au politics ukipenda. We are streaming live on Facebook from Kilimanjaro studios outside Washington DC, and we are shortly going to be going live on YouTube, so please call out all your YouTube friends. Please remember to subscribe to both our YouTube and Facebook pages of the One Mic Show, then follow us on Instagram, and also we are now on TikTok. We're going to be taking live calls tonight. The number is 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak. That number again is 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak, so save that number. Now on the show tonight, almost 1 year since the Gen Z revolt rocked Kenya, we're asking what's changed, what hasn't, and what next. Joining us shortly are Joy Nampaso and 𝘽𝙧𝙀 from the newly formed 625 movement. They're here to unpack the growing use of state surveillance tech and how young Kenyans are resisting. They'll also break down the shifting lines between religion and politics, and they will give us a diaspora perspective that you won't hear anywhere else. So start dropping your comments below and tell us what you want to hear from Sheila and Joy. And I can already see Washeke Ndirang was in the building all the way from Texas. Washeke, karibu sana. Na bila kusahau, napokea mziki toka DJ wetu machachari, mleta habari DJ 𝘼𝙗𝙗, na tutadunda kule viwanjani na Mika Oje zake nambari 7 mgongoni akituletea habari za michezo. Moja kwa moja toka Kilimanjaro studios, ni mimi mtangazaji na mwanahabari wako mpendwa Ali Badawi. Kwetu wananiita mteule, na wengine mniite mjukuu wa Masai, because I'm Kenyan by blood, American by design, Masai by choice. Sichagui, sikagui, na sibagui. Karibuni.
Now, let's talk politics.
A lot of politics this hour. Like I said earlier, we'll be talking to Joy Nampaso and 𝘽𝙧𝙀 from the 625 movement about what next 1 year later after the bloody uprising that led to the tragic killing of more than 65 Kenyan Gen Zs. Please drop a comment below and tell us what city you're tuned in from or where you are tuned in from. I'm your host and producer Ali Badawi, and it is Friday the 20th of June. We're coming to you live from Kilimanjaro studios outside Washington DC. Now please remember to follow the One Mic Show on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. On panel with me tonight is Mr. One Mic Kamakawa. Sports anchor Mika Och will be joining us via Zoom. Our resident DJ 𝘼𝙗𝙗 is already on the decks akituroga roga mpaka watu wanatoa machozi. And also not forgetting that our super producer is none other than Mubelwa Wabandio. Just to get started, before I get started, I can see, there's a couple of people here already tuned in. I can see Sasha Spice Africa is already tuned in. Sasha Spice, tuambie uko wapi? Are you in Nairobi ama bado uko Zanzibar? Tell us where you're tuned in from. Karibu sana. Let us know. Tell us if you're in Tanzania, kwa sababu we mara uko huku, mara uko kule. Let us know where you're tuned in from. I can also see Washeke Ndirang all the way from Texas. Karibuni sana. We love it when we get people from all over the world. And if you're tuned in from Kenya, let us know where you're tuned in from. However, Washeke, tell us whether you're in Texas or whether you're in, sometimes uko Kiev. I don't know whether you're in Tel Aviv today. Tel Aviv huko wanakula makombora ile mbaya sana.
She might be in Iran.
Or she might be in Iran huko, assessing the situation.
Assessing.
Okay, let us
Assessment
know. Yeah, so Sasha Spice Africa is tuned in live from Zanzibar. Karibu sana. Wasalimia watu pale Forodhani, wale vijana wakidive pale, waambie Ali Badawi December na karibia pale atakuja. Nimevaa bukta yangu na mimi pia ndakuwa na dive pale. Haya, number to call 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak.
What is bukta for Mosh? Because Mosh is asking.
Bukta ni vazi la kuogelea.
Oh, okay.
Sawa. Okay, sawa. So again, the number to call is 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak. Very hot conversation tonight. We want to hear from you. Washeke is saying she's tuned in from Tehran. Probably she's next to the Ayatollah, trying to find out what's going on.
I told you.
So karibu sana. Greg Hazlett is tuned in from Nairobi. Karibu sana, Greg. Karibu sana to the building. I think we're going to get started right away because we have a lot to cover tonight. Now, tonight we mark almost a year since the Gen Z revolt shook the streets of Nairobi and the soul of a nation. It was a moment when young people stood up not just to protest a punitive finance bill, but to demand dignity, accountability, and demand a new vision for Kenya. The smoke from the tear gas may have cleared, but the memory of the over 65 killed by police bullets and over 80 abducted or disappeared still lingers fresh in the air. But with the recent killings of Albert Ojwang while in police custody and the shooting of mask vendor Boniface Mwangi Karaoke, tonight we ask if anything has truly changed or are we back where we started? To help us unpack are two phenomenal women from the newly formed 625 movement. They're young leaders who've stepped into the space with courage, clarity, and conviction. First up is 𝘽𝙤𝙗𝙗, a community engagement strategist and a social media outreach powerhouse. Now, Joy is passionate about advancing ethical leadership and inclusive development. She also has a background in scientific research and a sharp eye for community-driven solutions. Joy believes the future of Kenya lies in empowering the next generation of leaders. So I want to take this opportunity to say, Joy, welcome to the One Mic Show. Karibu sana. How are you feeling today?
I'm so excited to be here. It's such an honor always talking about Kenya and how we can improve our country. So I'm excited to be here. I love how engaged your community is, and I'm looking forward to a productive conversation.
Okay, and how does it feel being in the studio today?
I feel ready to activate. You know how you're ready to just have good conversation? That's how I'm feeling right now.
Okay. All right. Karibu sana. And also with us tonight is 𝘽𝙤𝙮. Sheila is a brilliant researcher and an advocacy specialist with a deep background in governance, peace building, and media. She holds a master's in global humanities from Towson University and a bachelor's in journalism from USIU Africa. Sheila has worked across both grassroots and international settings, from supporting civil society networks to peace-building efforts in Sudan to running digital advocacy campaigns. Sheila's journey is one marked by equity, justice, and fearless truth-telling. Sheila, karibu sana to the One Mic Show. How are you feeling today?
Thank you so much for having me. A little bit intimidated because this is quite the stage, but I'm happy to be here.
Okay.
You don't sound intimidated.
Yeah. What exactly is intimidating? Is it the mic?
Fake it till you make it.
Huh?
Higher.
I mean, I'm sat opposite a wall where 𝘼𝙗 put his signature. That's what's intimidating. But yeah.
So are you gonna book your space next to 𝘼𝙗's signature?
Definitely.
Hatuwezi charge.
Well, like maybe we might send an invoice chini ya maji.
Kwa sababu watu wa research muaga nasikia do waga zinadonjo.
Okay. Haya, sawa. Karibu sana. Karibu sana, Sheila. Now, Sheila, what when you look back at last year's Uprising and where we are now, what stands out the most to you?
I think when I look at what's happening last year and what's happening this year is that I see there's a lot of similarities. It almost feels like we're still in the same place, except that it's a slightly different fight. For instance, last year we went to the streets because of a finance bill, and this year we're going to the streets because of police brutality in Kenya. But the difference or the similarity is that there's these small issues that pop up and then it converts into Ruto must go.
Okay.
So that's the similarity we're seeing. And it's almost spiritual in a sense that it always happens in June. If you even think about Sabasaba, though Sabasaba is in July.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I'm feeling about it.
Something about the temperature. It starts rising when June gets June gets here.
Yes.
Now back to you, Sheila. What was going not Sheila, sorry, to Joy. What was going through your mind this time last year as the Gen Z revolt took shape? Joy.
For me, last year, I think a year from now, which is crazy because time really flies. I can't believe it's already been a year. But at the time, last year in June, I think there was an innocent excitement. I mean, I remember just being happy to be around other young people, other Kenyans, feeling some FOMO from not being able to be on the streets in Nairobi. And I feel like that was the energy on June 25th. There was a lot of, as I said, innocent excitement. I don't think people realized the lengths of depravity and brutality and bloodshed that would follow. And I think what I feel right now, actually, I feel inspired that people, not just people my age, but Kenyans, despite all of the treasonous things that have been done to them, they still have that spirit of revolution in them. Despite seeing the disappearings, the murders, that every morning we wake up to something new. You honestly can't keep track of how many people are being disappeared. So I think I'm inspired by the Kenyan spirit that despite everything, they're still on the march and trying to make a better country for themselves.
Okay, amazing. Joy, And I can see some comments already coming in. Sasha Spice Africa anasema poa, nitawasalimia njoo kabisa all the way from Zanzibar. And Sasha anasema salute to all the children we lost and have continued to lose in Kenya. Fighting a systemic oppression, we shall not relent until we get back our nation. Very powerful coming from Sasha Spice. And then hapa Esther Mulusa anasema greetings from Shimalavandu at this witching hour.
Abandu banje mulembe
Yeah.
musakhulu.
So hiyo hapo Esther Mulusa ameitoa, but I read it, I captured it before itoe. Amesema at this witching hour. So Esther, maybe tell us a little bit more about what's going on in Chimalavandu at this hour.
There are some witches there.
Yes, and then Stephen Batiapa all the way from Dallas, Texas, anasema we are here, we are in the building, karibuni sana. And again, the number to call is 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak. We want to hear from you. Let us know what you're thinking. It's almost a year later since like Parliament was stormed and more than 65 Gen Zs were killed. And then I can see hapa Esther Mulusa pia anasema good tidings from Shimalavandu at this witching hour over here. So yes, so Esther Mulusa is admitting that she's witching. Please define to us what witching is. Was it a typo of watching? Ama maybe there's something.
Maybe she won't be witching.
Yes,
she might have meant bewitching juu kuna vile mabati ilipigwa akilala.
Because unajua kama angekuwa yuko hii county inaitwaje? Hii county inaitwa Kisii County ama Nyamira County. Kama angesema
Boss, it's from Kisii downwards.
It's downwards.
Yeah, from Kisii downwards.
Okay.
Yes.
Haya, DJ Moshfire.
Kisii utateketezwa.
DJ Moshfire, karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Yes.
Mjukuu wa Masai.
Yes. So from the few things you've heard from the amazing ladies that we have on the panel tonight,
Yes.
what are your expectations tonight?
I expect them to come out with signs of Ruto must go. They'll be over here singing praises for whoever their new leader is. Let's find out. They're going to be telling us what they're feeling now, where they're seeing us going in the future, and how we can help push this journey along.
Okay, all right. Asante sana DJ Moshfire. And then we want to go to Mika Och. Mika Och tuned in Zoom. Mika, talk to us. What are your expectations tonight? Mika, twende kazi.
Oja
Come slowly.
ngoma.
Yes, Mika.
Ningekutukana ni vile tuko tu live.
Haya, twende kazi Mika.
Go for it, Mika.
Yeah,
Go for it.
Talk to us. What are your expectations tonight?
First of all, ngoja kwanza acha nisalimie watu.
Okay. Haya.
Hii haraka kurukia ugali hata janawa. Anyway, all in all, happy Friday, people, and I hope you enjoyed the Juneteenth. It was a good weekend. It was a good holiday, and it's a holiday that people should be proud of and enjoy it.
Correct.
Hizi hizo zingine, hii unafaa kuwa unatoka huko nje unatwak kwa giza kwanza unarudi kwa nyumba. And what my second thing is, Shimalavandu was a nickname that was given to our school bus in high school, Kakamega High School. Ilikuwa inaua watu sana. Kanyaga wanafunzi wengi sana.
What?
Huh?
So yeah, so it was called Shimalavandu. Like Shimala means inamaliza. Vandu ni watu, inamaliza watu. So in short, Esther Mulusa is telling you she's in Kakamega. Witching hours, it's early in the morning. Witches ukimbia saa hii.
Oh, damn.
Wale watu wa kupiga mabati, si ndio?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what she's trying to tell you when she says that. Yuko Shimalavandu at this witching hours. Like she's basically in Kakamega and it's early in the morning.
Okay.
Or late at night.
Okay.
Actually, late at night, see early in the morning.
Okay, now
Late at
understood.
night, yeah.
Now understood. I know now to be careful. If I ever go to Kakamega, I only will do my activities during the day.
Kwani ali si nyinyi mko na majini?
Eh?
Si ziko same
No,
WhatsApp group?
unajua naitrana si naitrana zo usumbua tu ni wachawi. Si like naitrana wala kukimbia tu. Wa kugonga vitu. Witches, like si witches wale wa Harry Potter, Expelliarmus. Na wani wa kukimbia tu. Hao wengine wanaishi Ukambani na Kisii na areas zingine. Anyway, what I'm expecting from this hour is that we are getting to the anniversary of the June 25th protests, which shaped the history of Kenya, like totally shaped the history of Kenya. A lot of people might look at things and say they seem okay, but if you realize right now in Kenya, there's that fear of how will the masses react. will this put people back in the streets? This is actually forced a handshake that was never in the works anywhere to be seen. So the political landscape has shifted. And also now we are seeing that as much as things look like they are the same, this is the first time politicians have fear of the public. Most of the time, they usually regard the public as servants for them. They will command them and they will demand what they want to do. So what I'm expecting from this conversation today is, what are we seeing since that time? How are we seeing how things are looking? And how do we participate and help in a way without taking away the meaning of the fight from the people in the ground? Kwa sababu kuna kuanga na disparity kubwa between diaspora and the ground. And that is one disparity that we need to figure out how to work to shake off and to close that gap. When you see politicians coming here in America to see you and to talk to you, it's your money that they want, and they know you have influence outside there. So when we get to understand what the ground is feeling and how they need, those politicians know exactly what power we have. Ni sisi na disparity yetu ndo tutumiangi power yetu vizuri. We need to figure out how to do that.
So
back to you.
Yeah, Mika, you bring up a very interesting point. You know, you're already in chapter 5, na tuko tu intro. Now, I saw a flyer going round that Rigiji is gonna be coming to the US. Now, in America, yes, Rigiji is gonna be coming into the US, I think, in July, if not the end of June. It's gonna be coming in the US. And my question to you, we know that there are very few registered voters in the US. I mean, there was the registration exercise did not go too well the last time. And you say that the politicians in Kenya are looking at the diaspora, yet we do not have numbers. But you're bringing the point that they're after our money, which I think a lot of people have not given deep thought. I've also been seeing Matiang'i making rounds. I've seen him make rounds in Dallas. I've seen him. I don't know. He lives in
made
DC.
rounds in Minnesota. Wakampromise chopper.
Oh, he lives in DC?
Chopper campaign.
Yes. Matiang'i actually lives in DC. He was working for the World Bank. Yeah. So those are the things you get to know when you come to the one.
Mungemsalimia
Actually, ukienda Swahili Village, Bellsville every Tuesday.
Yeah. But one thing that's off topic. Mika, man. One thing that's a bit off topic. That I don't know whether I should be saying this, but anyway, because I know his supporters wataniskia. I think one tactical error that Matiang'i has made in his, he hasn't declared, but in he's clearly showing interest.
Correct.
He has declared today.
Oh, he declared today?
Yeah, today is when
Okay, so I missed that.
He went home and declared.
But I think one tactical error he made with the crowds he started meeting, especially here in the diaspora, they were all Kisii crowds, and if you're looking to become a Kenyan president, one thing that Raila was able to do very effectively. I know Raila is not very popular amongst the Gen Z in studio, but one thing that Raila was able to do very effectively.
Do no wrong.
One thing that he was able to do very effectively was to posture himself as a national leader. He always had so many different people around him.
Faces, yes.
He was very careful about being surrounded by Luos. And
even the way he was sitting, Ali, we had inside information. Even the way he sat at a news conference or whatever,
venue,
very strategic.
Always very strategic.
They knew who to place on the left side, who on the right side, and had nothing to do with tribe.
So I think at the moment, you know, like my good friends, I think my good friends from the Kisii community are a bit excited.
Yes,
but they need to chill out, because if they continue surrounding him, he's gonna be labeled as a tribal kingpin, and we're gonna go back to that cycle that we were in.
But Ali, don't you think that even whether he did this or not, he was already labeled that way because kuna vile and Maraga is also in the mix from what we see. So to me, naona hiyo vote yao ni split.
Why are you saying he's gonna be labeled as a tribal?
Either way,
but he was already labeled, because when he went to Kenya for the first time, he went to Gusii Stadium to heroes welcome.
Yes.
Right? And I know they tried to capture the Kibaki, the Matiba. You remember when Matiba came from the UK in 1992? And the way people at the airport waiting for him, like the whole country was excited, even though Matiba was brought in to split Ford. But you do remember the way he came. I think he wanted that effect, but that doing that effect in Gusii Stadium doesn't really talk along. Nikama, and I'll be honest here and say, I know most people will feel mad, but let's be honest, it's just like what the new party is doing, Yakina Rigiji. Yes, you guys, you talk a lot, you have rallies, but in Central, to Kenny Central.
So again, I think this is a false start, but yeah, you have something you wanted to add.
So I think Rigiji has realized that there's the cloud of being a Kikuyu kingpin over him.
Yes.
And that's where the cousins is coming from. I don't know if you've been on the internet, but Hi Cousins is his way of saying that, yes, I'm Kikuyu, but I have many cousins that support me, other Bantu communities, and that's what he was talking about when he was in, was it the coast? Yeah, he was at the coast. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's the thing. Let's be honest. We want one term to be a reality, right? If we want one term to be a reality, the only time we ever did something like this, the whole opposition ganged up together.
Again, the number
the
to call.
The whole time we defeated a sitting president, the whole opposition ganged up together.
Okay.
If these guys don't gang up together, which I hardly see them doing, one term itakuwa two term.
All right. Number to call 202-683-4570. Press star 5 to speak. Mika anasema if the opposition does not unite, we might one term itakuwa two term, itakuwa 10 bila break, and that's a very scary prospect to even think about. Again, the number to call is 202-683-4570. Press star 5 to speak. We'd like to hear from you. Apa Estamulusa anasema witching hour is an English term. We are good people here. Okay, all right. So hiyo witching hour Miss Jessica. And then anasema when the witches in England did their magic. At Chimalavandu, our land has just been excised for an electric fence around the Kakamega forest without compensation. We are livid. And I can see also Ruth Wanjiru is also tuned in from the West Coast. Estamulusa nasema Shimalavandu is a dangerous narrow road that killed people. It's not about human violence. The road has since been made into a dual carriageway, which has stopped the carnage. And then anasema 3 a.m. is the English people's witching hour. Washeke anasema Mika, you have a good point. Diasporans crumble to kiss politicians' ass when they come here.
Wow.
And Washeke says, and we still socialite politically in our tribal cocoons. And I can also see a Kenya Doyo all the way from Houston, Texas is tuned in again. The number to call is 202-683-4570. Press star 5 to speak. I know people also
Ali, before you
YouTube.
go on, Paula, to cut you off on YouTube, just to welcome Val. Val is here. Karibu Val, she's on YouTube. And to all our my YouTube fans, kuna watu hapo, they're not talking. Ongeni, now's the time to talk.
Yes.
All right, back to you, studio.
All right, thank you so much, DJ Moshfire. Now I want to come back to you, Sheila. You were there during the honeymoon phase of Ruto's win in 2022. You were still living in Kenya.
Yes.
So you were there when all that craziness was going down. From where you sat, did anything hint that we were barreling towards a full-blown uprising? You know, from when, he got elected, of course, there was the euphoria. But as a few months started going, was there any point you started feeling that things are not right, na mambo itaharibika? Ama did the uprising come as a surprise to you?
I think I'll start by saying that 2022 was actually the first time I voted.
Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of did I see the uprising? No. I don't think anybody saw this. I don't even think the security forces in Kenya even saw this. But I think what we saw in 2022 was a lot of, I don't want to say mob mentality, but I think, group thinking is even worse. A lot of moving with the crowd, a lot of hustler versus dynasty. And it showed that, yes, we have an economic disparity in Kenya. I think the numbers right now is that basically the kind of inequality that exists in Nairobi right now is South Africa apartheid levels.
Wow.
So there's a very big disparity between the poor and the rich. And that's what Ruto fed on for his 2022 election. However, the script that the masses would now turn on Ruto, I can't say I saw it in 2022, no.
Okay, that was not visible.
No.
What was it that convinced people in 2022? And I'm not going to ask you how you voted, but if you feel sufficiently philanthropic, you can tell us.
No one can hear.
Yeah, but what is it that that made people convinced that this is the guy who will deliver us from Gondwana land to Canaan?
You know, people say Ruto is a master politician, which to some extent I believe. And then go back to the Hustler versus Dynasty. And his opposition was basically Uhuru and Uhuru sponsoring Raila.
Yes.
And those are people who've run for office over and over and over again. Uhuru has been president before. These are people whose fathers were people in the Kenyan government. So that campaigning, that us versus them campaigning can be very not intoxicating, but can be very influential to the mind. And I think that's why a lot of Kenyans jumped on that bandwagon. And we also have a tendency as Kenyans to look for our savior in politics when we should really be looking at reforming our institutions.
Okay, reform our institutions, and you still did not answer the question, but that's okay. We can get back.
I didn't vote for Ruto, by the way. Let me premise
thank
that.
God.
I did not. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, thank
All right.
God.
Okay, so
What? But can I ask another question behind that voting thing?
Sure,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So, why didn't you vote before 2022?
No, I wasn't 18.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, sawa. So, at your first...
hiyo swali yako lakini
Hapana, si...
Hiyo swali yako mazee kuna vile
Si muniwache tu mimi niulize. You know, I have a reason why.
yeah.
And it's because my nieces and my nephews, I think prior to 2022, were not even feeling like getting a voter's card. They were not
Yeah.
even feeling like even if they got a voter's card, it would make a difference. So for the last two elections, for those who were able to vote,
Yeah.
they just sat it out.
You have a very strong point.
They sat it out and they didn't want to know.
I think people under 30, most people under 30 were not thinking
They
about
did
voting.
not want to know.
Yes, but-
Somehow in 2022 is where there seemed to be a little bit more, I don't know if it was, I don't know if I call it excitement, or they actually went and got voters cards and voted. The ones who, the ones who were still not sitting it out, let me just put it
Yeah,
that way.
and I think a lot of people who put Ruto into power were millennials. You know, like, I'm sorry to say, it was my
yeah, hiyo
generation.
ni ukweli.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it was
true.
millennials. Those are the ones who are excited. You know, like we were seeing them online with these UDA shirts. And it was all the way even up at diaspora. I mean, right now, wote wameingia gizani, wameingia chini ya maji, but we know who they are.
Lakini pia tukisema tu kweli, millennials actually kwa hizi generations zetu zote ukiangalia, millennials na boomers are the most tribalistic.
No, you mean millennials and X?
No, boomers.
So,
X, at least wakona X, wakona kanini, X wakona kabampa cause X walikuwa ndo X wengi ni most X ndo walikuwa ni watoto wa urban rural migration, like wa kwanza. So there was a lot of intermixing with them and nini, at least wali interchange. Millennials kina sisi ndo tunasema kasi ndo second generation ya urban rural migration. And sisi unfortunately, cause si tulianza kuvote when from 2002, right? From 2002, and then after that tuliingia at a very bad tribal cocoon. If you just look around us, even at upper diaspora and nini, you will see how much tribalistic we are, as Wangeshi said. It's usually the guys, the older than us, our parents, who didn't know anything different than us. Na sisi, the younger, the younger kids, not their older kids. Si tuko na tribalism ingine mbaya sana.
Okay, yeah. So sawa. So
It's
I can
Waweru, not Wangeshi.
yeah. So I can see hapa Owuor is tuned in, and also Sasha Spice Africa says shaking it off is hard because the diaspora has failed us for as long as they meet politicians. They don't care what is happening back home. Some of the US groups I am in, some men older than my dad can't reason beyond tribe, and that is where the problem is. What they can't believe is that we millennials cannot be compromised. That was our mission. Gen Zs took over by facing the guns. Gen Alpha will have it better than all of us because they are not tribal and we have made the way for them. Africa will be free soon with the integration between us and the black diaspora coming back to Africa to invest. When we suffered to get licenses because they were for Asians and Europeans, but now even African Americans and Caribbeans are coming back. Believe me, we are so close, and I am telling you as someone who brings a lot of African American and Caribbean investors to Africa, things are shifting at a very fast rate and politicians are so worried. We shall be free so soon, but the elderly diaspora must stop funding tribalism. It is also hard to save hungry people. Right now, almost every African I know has a business, and that is our power because we are becoming financially stable in Africa to be able to free ourselves. So quite optimistic comments there. Now, like some truths there about the diaspora, because I think the problem that happens in the diaspora sometimes is that kuna watu wanatoka na hiyo kabila Kenya and then they freeze in time, because when you come here you freeze in time.
Yes.
So this is how you left things, and especially these ones who haven't traveled back home for a long time, they have a tendency to sometimes be the most potent when it comes to mambo za ukabila na nini, because they are frozen in a certain time. They expect you to because you have a certain name to behave in a certain way. Yeah.
Unakwanga politically correct.
Hey, Mika usichome.
Okay, Mika, say it the way it would be said on the ground.
Ni watu wa Ocha ndo wanazo tabia.
Ay.
Okay.
Mika yawa. Umesema ati watu wa Thika ni? Sorry.
Umependa kwa politically correct, ni watu wa Ocha ndo wanazo tabia. Si ati stuck in time. Wametoka na ukabila yao kutoka pale wametoka. Wamekuja America. Unajua kitu moja tu usahau ni nini? You can turn yourself into an African American. Unaweza turn uonge kama African American everything. Wanasema you can take the girl out of the village but you can't take the village out of the girl. Something like that, right?
Yes.
The fact is how you are bringing, it's just like in America, right? We thought there was a lot of diversity to Mezoiana and everything, but then how you're brought up, dinner table conversations are coming to show up right now. Racism didn't go away, it was just silent. It's the same thing with us. Tribalism didn't go away just because you're in America, it was just silent. But now you've gotten a chance to show it off, you're showing it off as brightly as you can.
So that was Mika's opinion. Your comment ya watu wa Ocha.
So unasema si comment ya One Mic Show.
Has nothing to do with the One Mic Show. That is Mika's opinion. That is Mika's opinion.
Me, I stick na watu wa Thika, but endelea.
But there's a certain cohort that was stuck in time, and like even in the conversations, ukisikia hata vile wanaongea na comments zao, I mean, it constantly comes out, and I think
Mika is right. I don't know if it's so much about what wa Ocha. I think it's just for all of us, it's all your background, which how you were raised, and your belief system. Since it's already entrenched in you, then you come over here, and then Mika's right. One thing that happens, you freeze in time, because you have that disconnect. Unless you go home and reconnect, and then you get your wires, connected or disconnected from when you left, and then they are connected again. Deprogrammed, whatever you want to call it, right? Unless you have that touching the earth every X amount of time, at least a year, you really disconnect, because it's a very fast-paced, changing environment, and that whole tribalism thing, it's going away, because if you see like the younger kids, the younger generations right now, tribe for them is not, they don't even know what is that thing called tribe.
They don't see the benefit of tribe. They don't see the value of
they don't speak the languages.
When the tribe doesn't take care of them.
They've seen the negative side of tribalism, but on the other not so nice part about what's happening is that they're losing the languages, they're losing the culture, and they're losing. So it's a mixed bag here and there.
But the thing is this: how do you value the culture? And something about culture. When you want to preserve culture, you have to you have to show the kids what value are they getting in maintaining our culture. What are they seeing? Like you see, like right now, one thing I like about this generation is they're so immersed into music. They're so immersed into music that to a point whereby they're going back to their roots in themselves. We saw with urban tone walirudi kwa gengeton, kwa muziki ya kitambo wakati wa ngoma huko. We are seeing like the house music guys, they're going back to Kikuyu songs, all Kikuyu folk for songs wanarudi huko. If you're looking at the urban disco, urban blues music, wanarudi kwa ngoma za Kijaluo na za Kiluya, like they're going back to the culture they're looking for. So musically, they're trying to maintain their culture. In other aspects, they're doing rurashios, koitos, nyombos all over the place. Like they're taking in that tradition. They've brought back matatu culture as it was. They're enjoying that. They're going back to their culture. They're nitpicking. What they're not picking from their culture is the Mutuetu narrative, right?
Okay.
Because this Mutuetu is not helping me in any way. This Mutuetu is actually harming me. Because they know, they're looking at things that this is the most stressed out generation. There's the most stressed out generation because they have nothing waiting for them. Like Wanangalevi, they're seeing the future is bleak. Because if I can wake up and see my older brother still struggling to look for work, and I'm behind him in Akuja, what hope do you think I have?
All right.
And he's not missing work juu ni mjinga, ako sawa, ana kila kitu. So before we blame them on how they're missing of culture, what is culture giving back to them?
Okay, that's a very good point.
Wow.
Number to call, 202-683-4570. Press star 5 to speak. You're tuned in to the One Mic Show. Live from Kilimanjaro Studios, we have Joy and Sheila in the building. And we're here talking about 1 year after the Gen Z revolt. What has changed? What has remained the same? And what comes next? Now, Sheila, I'm going to come to you. Or rather, maybe this time, let me go to Joy. Where if we start reflecting back, rather looking from the outside, what struck you most? Because you were already here when the Gen Z revolt happened. Looking from the outside, and I think even in elections 2022, you were already here in the US. Is that correct?
Actually, was in Kenya.
Or you were still in Kenya during
that?
the...
I had taken the summer.
Oh, so
off,
you
I spent
had
3
already
months
in Kenya.
during
Okay, but
the
you had
summer.
already lived for
But
some
I was
time in the
already
US. Okay, all right, good. And during the revolt, you're here. So from the outside looking in, what struck you most about when the protests unfolded last year? What surprised you maybe about the level of the anger, or maybe the speed at which things moved? What struck you the most?
I would say what struck me the most was the fearlessness. I think people just were at their wits' end.
Mm-hmm.
They were just at the end, they just didn't care. At that point, I think how social media was able to bring people together so quickly, spread information about what was in the finance bill in all these different languages. This happened in a matter of a few weeks. They say, okay, we have this finance bill. It is incredibly ridiculous how high they want to tax us. We're going to come together. We're going to print posters. We're going to... people, there's this app that people were using as walkie-talkies, and the owners of the app actually were like, in 2 weeks, 30,000 people that have downloaded our app that allows people to communicate like the police walkie-talkies.
Oh, wow.
So it was
That's outside the network, outside the phone network. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was insane how quickly people came together, young people, and they were on the streets and they were unafraid of police. People were on top of police vehicles. There was really no fear. People went into parliament. It was a joke until it wasn't a joke, and people were in there. It was very fearless.
Guys were smoking tear gas.
People were smoking tear gas
And
People
returning
just
tear
didn't care.
gas.
They were like, "Oh, we want the other flavor. This one's not good enough."
Haina ladha,
Haina
haina
ladha.
ladha.
Mutulete ingine. So it's like the fearlessness, and I think what the political class underestimated is the exhaustion that the Kenyan people had. And it had started way before Ruto. This is not just because of him. I think the general public exhaustion started with the Ruto regime.
Okay.
Things had already started spiraling at that point, and I think it's one of the reasons Ruto was elected. People were exhausted. I remember I was in a supermarket before the elections. I was in Kenya at that time, and some guy was just yelling, Uhuru shuka tumechoka. So randomly, he didn't know anyone, but you could just tell that people were just exhausted at that point. And I think that's what even fueled Ruto to come into power, is because here comes someone to save the poor. The us who have been struggling for this Uhuru regime for the last 10 years, things have gone bad, we miss Kibaki, you know, there was all of those sentiments about the economy, and that catapulted him into power. And then for him to take people back to that level of exhaustion, I think people are just tired. They were like, okay, we're not doing round 2 of this.
Now, interesting you say that there was exhaustion, and maybe that's the reason why Ruto came into power. Do you feel like we might also be falling into a similar trap to where we were? Because as you can see right now, same situation. Ruto was Uhuru's vice president, but he was completely sidelined. And now we have Rigiji, who was Ruto's deputy president, and he was not only sidelined, but he's been impeached. And
Same
now he's
story,
talking against Ruto, and he's becoming,
Popular,
like a
yeah.
folk hero. He's even coming to the diaspora, and I can already see meetings being organized, town halls and everything. So do you feel like we might be, like slowly, without knowing, getting into the same trap?
I want to be optimistic and say we can't do the same story twice. I mean, unless they come with a new story that we haven't seen. But this one, I don't think so.
Okay. But Rigiji is popular. No, see
he is. Well, that's good, and that's good. We need someone who can engage Ruto, but on the side. We don't want him vying or for anything. To be honest.
Yeah.
Unajua nini, Ali?
Yes, Mika.
I'm agreeing with her in I don't see. I wouldn't see. It's hard unless we have a conversation with Rigiji to elewe, and he has to have a lot of conversations with a lot of people, especially in Kenya, to convince them that then it's not just this, they're not singing from the same hymn book.
Same script.
Yeah, because Rigiji was for everything this government was until he wasn't.
Exactly.
Until he got kicked out.
Yeah, he was for everything until he was. So the moment he was kicked out, that's when he became an enemy, and he started saying this government does this, that is. But sir, you were there, you were supporting it, right? Even police brutality. He himself said you cannot go and dance in front of a police and expect a kiss.
If you remember last year on June 25th, after people broke into parliament, the first person to go on TV was actually Rigiji. It wasn't Ruto.
It wasn't Ruto.
Yeah. So for me, I'm like, why are we even sitting here to be convinced by people? We saw the disregard for human rights. We saw the disregard for human life. So why are we sitting to be convinced?
The thing that Kenyans are looking for and are needing right now is new blood. Right, and that is why you see this guy came from working to the World Bank and tried to come in, because he's been off politics. He looks like new blood. He didn't negotiate for Nusumkate position. They lost. He disappeared. Now he's coming back. He's looking new.
Let me remind you.
But then we remember him when he was the interior minister, and everything that happened under him as the interior minister.
Yeah.
We have people like Kina Natembeya who all of a sudden wamekuwa too populous, and they're talking and they're doing stuff, right? So Kenya right now is unpredictable. I will say that. I cannot call anybody. I cannot call the elections for anybody.
I think
it's a very unpredictable boiling pot that, what do you call it? This Korean or this Asian soup whereby everything is thrown in. Alafu we ukichota, what you get is not the same thing that Ali is going to get.
Yeah.
So depending na vile unachota, that's what you're going to get. That's where Kenyan politics is right now.
Yeah, in Mount Kenya it's called Dhufumwaki. Yes, let's
Ali,
let's
you
come
went
back.
there.
Sheila was saying something, and then also Joy wanted to say something.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot we forget when it comes to these legacy politicians. Because remember when Uhuru was president, what did he tell us? He told us that every day we lose 2 billion to corruption. So anybody who was sat in that Kamkunji that was losing 2 billion to corruption daily, how are we entertaining that person? Just question.
And you see, he's a hero. He was welcomed in Dallas. He was welcomed in Minnesota, and now he's been welcomed in Kenya to another hero's welcome. So, these things worry me when I see them personally, because it feels like we had an opportunity.
Yeah, I was gonna say who's hero?
It feels like it feels like we had an opportunity, but then again, the opportunity is being lost. Joy.
I think we should be careful about new things, because sometimes we think new things are the answer to the problem that we have just because we don't understand them. Like, for example, with Ruto, right? He was new. He was not part of the Uhuru Odinga family. He was new, and that was exciting. No, I'm talking about like the new ideas that people bring, right? It's like it's normal mwananchi versus the elite.
He was
the repurposed idea. It resonates with people. The other thing actually that I feel like the new idea is going to be problematic, and I feel like I can find another the chicken farmer narrative that really resonated with Kenyans. Most of the population are literally chicken farmers. They're normal people, and they felt that they were being seen. We have political amnesia, and that's a whole other conversation.
Okay, Mika, ngoja tuongee na Unomike amekuwa hapa mkimya sana. Tell us something, Unomike. Watu hata wajakusikia hujasema kitu.
Who are you?
Just been enjoying on the side.
Ateke.
Who are you? What are you?
What the hell are you looking for?
Yes, Unomike, talk to us.
Kana young Luo, sorry. As you are.
Mr. Thika.
Yeah.
I mean, a whole lot has been said. I think I'm looking at the glass half full, because things happened 6/25/2024 that led to things happening that we never thought would happen.
Yes.
For example, we know the supposed rejection of the finance bill.
Yeah.
Dissolution of the cabinet.
Yeah.
Right. And as Mika said, a handshake that we never saw coming.
Yeah.
Blindsided us.
Totally.
Raira.
Baba can do no wrong.
Exactly. According to Omosh. And in still within that frame, the resolution with which not only Gen Z but even millennials, there was an awakening that has happened. Like you said, kuna watu wameenda chini ya maji, guys who are supporting Ruto.
Yeah.
They may not come out and say it publicly, but you can tell.
Yeah, wameenda gizani. Walikuwa wanatusumbua.
One of them is Itumbi. I've never heard of Itumbi again.
Yeah, I know.
No, Itumbi
by the
is
way.
there?
I blocked him.
You blocked him.
Will block.
Maybe.
Bado kwa kanandre huko.
Those are Kina Itumbi. Those are the modern day home guards.
Yeah, modern day.
Those are the modern day home guards.
They're the ones who pay the chaps who are doing making the noise now.
Yeah.
I think when you look at what has I think people expect big, monstrous movements. But I think what matters most is what is bubbling beneath.
The marginal gains.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Finance bill being read in different dialects. Let's think about that.
Yeah, that was
okay.
Yeah.
In Kikuyu, in Doluo, in Omosh, in Shimalavandu. I mean, when you look at it, it's being translated. People are understanding. People started reading or learning the Constitution. People started the procurement procedures. People now are have started learning about when we get a loan, it has to go into a consolidated fund. Like there are the small things,
the small marginal gains, and those things cannot be reversed.
They cannot.
Yeah, they're in people's systems.
Okay.
Yeah.
The rights with which, because once you understand the Constitution and the rights that you have, and this has actually been magnified more after Albert Ojwang, because now you start learning the procedure of
the details
and the procedure of what happens if you're summoned, if there's libel, if I say something against you, that has nothing, that I should not be arrested unless there's a warrant, there's something. Then if you're taken, you have to be
Charged.
you have to
You have
report.
to be-
You
yeah.
have to be taken to the local whatever. Then you have to be transferred. Then there's a procedure. So you're learning that there is a procedure, and that is provided for within
Within the law.
the law.
Yeah.
Many people did not know that.
Yes.
Because the powers that be, and I think the Akina Joy and Dani have said that there was you're not oblivious, we just don't know. So the abuse of power by these guys, the politicians, and how they use cops and how they use that to terrorize people, like even these goons and gangs or whatever.
Yeah.
At one point we would be terrified, but now
And we're gonna be talking about that
Yeah.
later on.
so
Yeah.
I think those are I think when you look at when you break it down, at least when you start looking at it like
from a granular level.
there has been so much gain.
Okay. Aya, sawa sawa. So a couple of comments here were coming in while we were having this conversation. I can see June Waweru is tuned in from Jamhuri. June Waweru, karibu sana. Ruth Kilungu also tuned in from Jamhuri, karibu sana. Let us know what's going on in Jamhuri, what people are saying on the ground. Then Skylar Robert says, it's so unfortunate that when I was in Kenya eating out and there was a table nearby with Syria retired Zacks boasting about their kids spread out internationally, their conversation was so tribal, I realized how disconnected we are with our parents' views. Rigiji, Skylar still says Rigiji is part of the same system. And then Esther Mulusa from Shimalavandu said, I protest. Shimalavandu is one of the safest places to live in Kenya, unlike some places where you have to hide if you land from the diaspora in fear of being greeted by some groups. Forced extortion. Here, I walk freely. No one will attack me because they think I owe them some dollars. We have never had a post-election violence here. The road carnage is no more. I think we really need to decolonize our minds when it comes to an expression like the witching hour, which originated from England, where witches existed and continue to exist. Having said that, we are busy coalescing around Natembeya and his Tawe movement as the Western region at large. Okay, that's according to Esther Mulusa. I've not researched much about Natembeya, but we'll be analyzing all these candidates one day. Skylar Roberts' father says, so is Uhuru and his minions who almost bankrupted the country. Jimmy Wanjigi has been speaking on the issues that no politician has been able to articulate. He supported Gen Z's et al. We have to understand that we were taught self-hate. We have to understand that we were taught, oh my goodness, this is a long comment. Wacha hii hapa ndarudi. Nitaisoma baadaye. But again, the number to call is 202-683-4570. Press star 5 to speak. Again, the number is 202-683-4570. Press star 5 to speak. Now we have Sheila and Joy in the studio, like our very phenomenal Gen Z ladies, and they're talking about where the country needs to go. This is 1 year later after the Gen Z revolt that happened last year. So maybe, Joy, coming back to you, reflecting back briefly on how there was so much momentum after the revolt, and then it peaked, but then it collapsed.
Handshake.
Yeah. Was that what exactly was going on, especially within chatter amongst Gen Z? What is it that made that movement, which had moved so fast, just spectacularly collapse?
I'm gonna mention something before I answer you that I
Sure.
wanted to say, so I don't lose it in my mind.
Yes.
It was about the idea, peasants versus the elite.
Yes.
Something I think people should be wary of is the term Gen Z leader. Just because someone is Gen Z does not make them a good leader. I think we should still uphold the standards of good leadership, regardless of the age group.
Amazing.
Because we've seen that just because you're young does not mean you have the right approach to being a good leader, right? So just because someone is in this age group and they're saying all the right things, they have very good posture, demeanor, whatever,
Oratory skills.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about
Yeah,
anyone
yeah.
specific.
Really?
Yeah.
Not everyone is meant to be a leader, so we should still uphold the same standards of what a good leader means, regardless. Because I know with the coming election, it's going to be I'm
Someone-
honestly kind of sick of hearing the word Gen Zs. I'm not gonna lie, but I know with the coming elections, it's gonna be we want Gen Z, we want Gen Z. But is the Gen Z a good Gen Z? That's the question that we should ask. Just because we want young leaders doesn't mean we want all the leaders.
Wow.
So that's an interesting point you brought, because like even our generation, when millennials were younger, there was also that talk that this is the detribalized generation, they're gonna come and change everything. But I think unfortunately what happened with our generation is that there was no divorce from the previous political formations. So the people who benefited were the people who shouted the loudest for the previous political formations, and they were the worst
Same
of the
kind
worst.
of people,
you
same
know,
person, you're
yes.
just younger.
Yes, and I have no problems mentioning names.
Kiarie.
Kipchumba Murkomen,
Wow.
Kiarie, Sakaja, you know, like, yes, because these are the people who are, they are actually very upright millennials who would have done a very amazing job, but then they were not able to penetrate the political systems, which is the other thing that I think I was having a conversation with you. The good people need to learn politics, because I think that's part of the problem, whereby mtu anajiona, oh, you know, like this is a muddy affair.
I don't want to get dirty.
I don't want to get dirty.
Yeah.
I don't want to get involved.
There's
So when a lot of people do that, then it's only the
crooks,
crazies
yeah.
are the ones, you know, the swindlers.
my friend says that politics is a full contact sport.
Yes.
Full.
Yeah.
So you cannot be Mr. Nice Guy.
You cannot go play
You can't
rugby
go
and
sit-
No,
expect not to get tackled.
Eh,
Mpaka
bana.
ukanyage shingo.
Yeah.
Lazima you kanyanga somebody.
Yeah. Sheila has
But
something
do
to
you
say.
think we are normalizing violence within politics?
No, by a
no.
contact sport,
Not violence.
we're not
violence.
normalizing violence. By a contact sport,
Politics
we
is
mean,
dirty.
we mean
You have to be ready to get dirty.
by even using the rugby analogy, there's a legal tackle and an illegal tackle.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to go do legal tackles.
And not to be
As-
discouraged if you
we are not saying you go steal money. We are not saying you do, you know, you go kill or do these other things that politicians do. But you see, like, for example, one of the things that a lot of these politicians are doing is getting paying bloggers.
Yeah.
Why can't the good politicians also pay good bloggers? Because if that tool is powerful, why can't we start paying? There's nothing wrong with writing. If you're writing, there's nothing
But it
wrong.
depends on what people are writing.
Michelle,
But that's what I'm saying.
It
but
doesn't
the
matter.
bad
But that's
people
what
are
I'm saying.
writing bad stuff. We need good people
But
to
that's
write
why
good
you need
things.
someone to counter Denis Itumbi. You cannot be letting Denis Itumbi come with his systemia facts, and then there's no one at this other side. And you know, like, there's an example. If you go check a page, you know, like on TikTok or X, called Occupy Democrats, that is good blogging. You know, it's like there's crazies on the right, but guess what? There's also good blogging. So it's like trying to find a legal way of doing it. If it's money that's required, is there a legal way of trying to raise money to support these candidates? We actually have a template of a candidate who's won without doing all these crazy things, and his name is Okia Omtata. Yeah, he was able to win in an environment where ODM had poured so much money, UD had poured so much money, but he was still able to win. We need to figure
Yeah.
out
Was he in the
Michelle-
politics?
what exactly is
Mi-
it that they did.
Michelle Obama, they had come out when they go low. Or is it when they go high? No, when we go low,
we go
we go
high.
high.
Yeah, because
How did that? How was that successful in 2016?
but let me hear Sheila's
2020, sorry.
let me hear
I
Sheila's
think
point.
as long as it's not getting outside of the boundaries of, like, you know, there's that mudslinging that people do where they come after, like, your family, or they come after you for things that are irrelevant
Yeah.
from the politics. Like, especially like when you see women who run for office, a lot of women have. If you I've talked to women who've actually run for
Unfortunately.
office in Kenya, and if you talk to them about the things that they experience running for, it's horrendous, to be honest.
Correct.
So yeah.
No, Mika, hold on.
Sheila Maliza, and then we're gonna
Finish it.
come to
Yeah,
you.
so if we are playing within the boundaries of, oh, I'm going to fact check you when you lie about me, of, oh, we'll put out polls, we'll pay bloggers to make sure a certain information is out, that's fine. But when
That's
it
what
comes
we're
to, like,
talking about.
insulting people,
No.
No.
No,
We're saying
We are talking about.
because you have to counterbalance, because whatever the Itumbis and the lies are doing is having an impact. You know, because most people are gonna read.
so like the
they're gonna read
sponsored hashtags.
Yes,
Yeah.
so people, so you have to find a counterweight and
Can we sponsor
But
Ruto
the
must
count,
go
the
hashtag?
count, we don't need to sponsor it, guys, because I'm constantly like checking on
Why
Twitter
not?
whenever there's a protest. It's organic. It doesn't need to be sponsored.
So now it has to go beyond organic, because these other guys, they are there daily. You cannot wait for when an event happens. These other guys, they're there daily.
24/7.
Remember during the when the war in Gaza, there's a lot of war going on in the world now. Israel is attacking Iran, but that's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
Israel, you mean?
There was a lot of propaganda that Israel was trying to throw out, and that's when people on this other side land, you have to pay people to counterbalance what they're doing. If you don't, you have to go overwhelm the algorithm with what they're doing, so that the information that people are getting, because we're in an algorithm controlled world, so if we don't figure out a way of giving support to the good people, because if you do the thing of, let me go do a good manifesto and then let me go make a speech about policy, political reality is
even your fans and followers will be like,
smoked out.
Kwani this person is not saying what this person is saying.
you'll get
I get what you're saying, but I'm saying a lot of that negative stuff, the Itumbis of this world, are being countered organically.
But then let me tell you something about politics.
yes.
Check what's trending on Twitter right now. Check what's it's going to be a mix of government and Kenyans.
If you want to run for politics, there are two things you have to be you have to accept. Number one is that no matter all the good that you will ever come to do as a politician, you will be remembered for that one bad thing that was said about you.
Like Kaluma.
It might be true, it may not be true, but that is what you will be remembered. Once you reconcile with that fact, you'll be fine.
It's a thankless profession.
Number two, in politics, if you want to be a good politician, you have to be able to not get offended by every lie that is thrown around you.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to have a tough skin.
So insults are gonna be there. It's a way of intimidation. Let me get you out of your character. Let me insult you. Get out of your character. You lose a debate. I win it. I might insult you and the moderator say, oh, don't do that. That's bad, right? But then I've unnerved you and you can't debate me. I beat you on that debate. I gain points. And I show people he's weak. And so, and that's the thing. We cannot, the one thing that we have to separate from life is that we live in a moral world, that we are politically correct on everything. It will never happen. I'm not telling people to go outside there and just be disrespectful and insult people, but do understand that there's somebody out there who's looking at you and they cannot, for their own purpose in life, come to understand how miserable their life is and look at you and they see how happy you are. And the only way they want to do is put in that misery with them, and they will come for you in ways that are not fair.
Okay.
So as a politician, there are some things you have to realize. Obama was told he married a man. He was being called a monkey. He's been called everything. He never once lost his cool. You could see him getting pissed off, but you never saw him losing his cool.
I think I get what you're saying, but is there room to be realistic and say this is the world in which we live in today, but we don't want to live like this forever? So yes, I'm going to have tough skin, I'm going to have thick skin. If you say 1, 2, 3 about me, it's not going to affect me in such a dire way, but we also can't be creating the conditions and the environment that will allow for this thing to keep happening. So, again, talk to the women who run for office in Kenya. It's a different ballgame.
And then I'm saying this because I'm saying this because I have actually worked in campaigns here, Kenya, and I understand what happened in those campaigns. And that is where I'm telling you, the reason it's like that, it's because how it's been like, politics hasn't started right now. Politics started way back in time before we came here. It's always been a dirty game. It's always been a popularity contest of who's going to to make more people like them than the other person.
Okay.
So
All
there's
right.
always going to be that defamation and those things. I agree with you. We are not supposed to have that environment. But if we want to tell people to discuss, if we want to be active in politics, if we want to be able to make a difference in politics, because right now, if you start doing civil education among your peers, utatukanwa na wengine. Kama hiyo itakufanya pull back, and I get you, that's you. If it gets to you, that's you, sawa, pole. I really hope nobody does that to you. But then and that is where it comes back to my first point. Whatever good you've done, there are people who won't appreciate it. Be satisfied with the good. Mwenye yuko satisfied naye ni sawa, kwa sababu at some point
Okay.
utakujiwa.
Okay, aya, so let's come to Joy back in
I
studio.
do agree with Sheila, and I think we're talking about different things. I think what he's saying is, as a leader, expect criticism, which I think is something you can't control if you're a public figure. But I think what Sheila is talking about is how difficult the system is to get to that pinnacle of power as president. The amount of things that you have done for that is something some people cannot stomach. It's not just a comment. It's not just people have insulted me, now I'm going to quit. It's, it's sexual abuse. It's sexual assault.
Yep.
It's murder. You hear, oh, this MP was murdered. You never, it could be politically, most likely politically, it's not small things that we're talking about, right? It is major infringements of human rights for you to be able to get to the pinnacle of power. And personally, if someone told me for you to be president, let's assume I'm a good person, right? Or anyone here is a good person. I say, I want to be president. And I thought, okay, you have to be part of this genocide, do these a few things, kill these children, and then you'll be president. And then finally, when you're at the top, you'll be a good person, then you can enact. I'm signing out, right? There are things we need to work on as a country that make politics such a disgusting experience, both for men, but even more especially for women.
Absolutely. And there are things that we need to work on in the long term. But then there's also certain things that we need to work in the short run. Like, for example, 2027 is coming, and it's coming very fast. So we have to decide. I think one of the problems that has been there with the good side, or the people who want the ethical stuff and everything, is purity tests. And I was talking to you about it, like, how pure is this person? So we get a person who's fairly a good person, but because there's one little thing that they were able to pick up, now all of a sudden, this guy, and this is a problem that we also see with the Democrats here in the US, they're gonna nitpick on Kamala, and then now everyone is gonna cry, like, how could people vote for Trump when you went and sat out, like during Kamala, because there were issues here and there that you did not agree with her. So I think we also have to start, like, weighing and knowing, we're not gonna get a perfect human. As long as someone is sufficiently ethical, maybe at some point in his life, he may have taken a bribe here and there. He may have done this, or maybe he may have been involved in something. So I think that's where we also need to be careful, because you're looking at a purity test. On this other side, these guys they're supporting their scam.
I'm not looking at a purity test.
Yeah.
Remember what I said in the beginning. Institutions, not people. I think for me, when I think about a best case scenario out of this revolution, is that we create such harsh conditions so that even if we elect the devil himself, he has no room to be corrupt. He has no room to violate human rights. He has no room to kill people who dissent against his government. That's what I want. Aside from that, we are not going to achieve that if we start saying, okay, we have leeway for this, we have leeway for that. We can elect someone who's been in 1-2 corruption. You'll start saying that, and by the time you're done, everybody will be on the table for election.
By the way, Kenya, yeah, 1 second, Mika. By the way, Kenya has, when you compare continent-wide, has some of the strongest institutions. When you compare, like, within Africa, let's not even go. Let's compare apples to apples. Compared to other African countries, we have a very progressive constitution. If you read our laws, they're very strong laws. The problem is, if we have a leader who is determined to go against those rules and laws, look at what Ruto is doing. Things that nobody ever thought can be done. If you have someone who's determined that they don't like, even within the United States.
Yeah.
The country that apparently has some of the strongest institutions. Look at what Donald Trump is doing.
I get what you're
Look at
saying.
what Donald Trump is doing. So that's why I'm saying it is important, yes, to find the right people. But at the moment, when these are the three options that we have, we know this one guy is a scum of the earth. This other guy, you know, like he's the one who's on our side, but he's not at 100%. Maybe he's at 70 or at 65%. Let's not keep amplifying, because what tends to happen, and that's what the other side does, they will look at that small thing where, like, for example, like with Kamala, whereby Republican groups were the ones who are amplifying those small issues that Democrats had, and then they become larger than life. Then all of a sudden someone is saying, I'm not even going to vote.
Yeah.
Then the next thing you have is a Donald Trump. Because think about it. Think about a second Ruto term. Just think about it.
I get what you're saying.
Yes.
But the math you're doing, it's as if 2027 is tomorrow. It's as if we have no room to find our new leaders who can come, and they can come with their integrity.
Give me an example.
Of what?
Do you have any example of maybe 2-3 leaders who both have integrity and can have a path towards beating Ruto? Do you have any 2-3 names in mind?
I cannot even speak to that right now because I don't have a crystal ball. They might not be having that integrity
No,
in
but
2027.
but who do you in your mind? Because as you talk about integrity, there's someone that you have in mind, or is this a unicorn? Is this someone who doesn't exist? Now you see, and this is what I'm talking. The reason why it's a difficult question.
Yeah.
I have my own unicorns. I have my own unicorns, but then again, I'm also looking realistically, because we want someone with integrity,
Yeah.
but at the same time, we also want someone who has the capacity to defeat Ruto. So you see, right now, even thinking about that person, and 2 years is not a very long time.
I get you,
It's
yeah.
around the corner.
Yeah.
Around
So
the
I'm gonna give you homework, because I know that's a difficult question. Think about 2 people or 3 people in mind that this is the kind of person that you think will be a good leader. Because the same way you struggle to think is the same way all people who want someone with integrity up there are struggling to think.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying we also have to compromise, because if we are not getting to that position where we can even name an individual, it shows you how difficult.
But can we
this is.
counter that with good institutions? Let's say we don't get our 100%, we get our 90% person, 90% good. Can we counter
then-
that with strong institutions so that
Ali,
there's no
can I answer
incentive?
that?
Yes, and that's a long-term project.
Long-term process.
That's a long-term
Ali,
project.
Ali,
That's not
can I
a
answer
2-year
that?
project. Yes, go ahead, Mika.
In America, we do have good institutions right now. But you have a guy who's breaking laws every day with executive orders. And he breaks laws because he has pumped courts with these people. He controls both houses, and he's doing illegal stuff, right? We have military now arresting people inside the country. Like, that's a violation of the Constitution. So you can have, the thing is, what I'm trying to say is that you can have institutions, but as Ali said, if you have a leader who has determined that those institutions don't work, they won't work.
A
I
distraction.
get
Yeah.
what you're saying,
Especially-
which is why
especially
I'm
the
going to
Especially the control-
90%.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Especially if that leader has decided that this is how they're going to be. Now, one thing we have to realize is that if we go back in time to creation, there was good, then bad came in on the 7th day. Right? After those 7 days, bad came in. And now there's good and evil. And the world has always had good and evil. Everybody has good and evil in them. Right? The reality is you being able to understand that this is bad, this is evil, and this is good is what builds you as a moral. We cannot have, and everybody has a different moral compass on how they're doing things. So when we get to a point whereby in life we understand that there is evil, then that will be able to make you, as a good person, understand how you want to find that evil. And that is what Ali was saying when he was saying that the good side also has to start responding also has to be counter measuring everything that is coming. For every salvo that is coming from that side, you have to come in. The same way for every murder that is committed, it has to be exposed and people push for it, for prosecution for it. Even though it takes time, even if justice takes time, push for it. That is how we're going to balance this world. But expecting that the world is going to be leaning either on a good side or on an evil side, it's never going to work.
Okay,
We have-
yeah. I'm gonna let Joy respond to this, and then Sheila, and then we're gonna move on from this, because this is
I
a
think-
very hot conversation.
I think a good summary for what we're discussing is presently at the current time, Kenya has broken systems, and those take some time to repair because it
Yes.
starts mentally even before it gets into the system, right? If we think about the police are, they're trained from when they're recruited that being brutal is the way of doing things. I mean, before you're able to change that kind of thing, it takes time. So I think number one, in the present moment, we need to focus on picking the best possible leader as much as we can, the best possible leader. And number two is that we need to then focus less on the people and more on system reforms. How can we transform our prison systems? How can we transform our police system, our education systems? Those are the things that affect people in their daily lives, right? The president is out there running around, but the education system is what's teaching children, right? The police is who people interact with every day. The healthcare system is where people, are passing away from very simple complications. So I think systems are the most important thing that we as Kenyans, outside of even election time, we should be pushing for. Not every time who is going to be president, it's, are we advocating to transform our country from the most basic things? That's where all of our energy should be going into.
Okay, now real quick before Sheila, before you give your last submission, there's one thing that I'm gonna like I'll say from experience. I personally think what we need is a system to groom good leaders and have a support system that will allow them be able to win those political seats.
I agree.
Yeah.
The leadership will always beat good systems. As in, you have, and this is just also with my experience in leadership, a good leader will give you better results with an average system than a place that has good systems. And I'll give you an example. In a company, it could just take a change of a CEO. A very well-performing company, it could just take the changing of a CEO.
A company and a country,
they're two different things.
You
Even
can't
a country.
compare the two.
Yes, even a country. Remember when Kibaki took over from Moi, we still had the same constitution. We still had the same institutions.
The system, though, is actually, it's to protect people from a bad. It's not to. If you have a good leader, yes, he can work with a bad system.
I
but
agree
if you
with
have
you.
a bad, it protects people from the amount of pain and suffering
How well
compared to a bad system.
can we agree that America has good institutions? Can we agree?
Arguably. I mean, there's countries that have
So-
better systems.
Okay, so
Actually, no, because electoral college,
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
countries with better systems.
gerrymandering.
no, I'm talking about so
Better than Kenya, maybe.
so give me an example of a country that has good institutions.
So the top ranked countries in terms of, it's the Nordic countries. Are they called the Nordic countries? Is that
The
their
like
name?
super Western European,
Scandinavian.
So you're saying
Yeah.
Scandinavian.
And you know the Scandinavian countries,
But then what is-
and I've been to Mika Ngoja Kidogo, and I've
I'm
been to
not an
Sweden.
expert though. Don't
You,
quote
you know
me.
you know what they do? They groom their leaders. Not anyone can be. Those Nordic countries, there's a common denominator in all these countries that have very good systems, from Switzerland to the Nordic countries. There's a very common denominator, and the common denominator is when it comes to grooming leaders. Some of these leaders are known even from when they're in high school, and it is so difficult. If you're a sleaze, we're on a Joyani, like, that's not even a space that I'm gonna bother to go and interfere. And I think what's happening in America right
And that's
now,
a system, isn't it?
Yeah.
They've created a system of
A
judges,
system?
so it repels all the. They
But
know
there's
that they
also
can't
expectation.
expect
it only
Like if
takes,
someone
it,
was blatantly corrupt, like the country would stop.
They know that they.
it only takes
Yeah.
one bad leader to to make a very good system entirely rotten. Look at what's happening. Let's look at what's happening in America.
But also,
We are
I
not
think a
arguing-
problem is using America as the base
Yeah.
for
No,
our
but
But we're not
comparison.
arguing
and-
for either or. We are
We're not
arguing for
yeah.
both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
forget America. Forget America. Take out
America,
America.
'cause,
Take
you
out
know,
America. Take out America.
It's
Let's
not the
look
base
at England.
of what
Let's
we
look at
should
okay.
compare everything
Let's
to.
look at the UK under Boris.
Even the UK. But
Okay, yeah, let's look at the UK under
So
Boris.
that's what I'm
take
asking
out
you
the
guys.
UK.
Yeah,
Take
that's
out
what I'm
the
asking
UK.
you
Look at-
guys.
look
What
at-
I
example?
wish I had a better example, but
Look
I
at
think we
France.
need to move away
And then,
from
and then
looking
you
at
see,
these two
when you look at the
countries as
Scandinavian
examples.
countries in Europe, also look at the institutional racism that is in those countries. It's bad. So it is good for them. For it's good as servicing a certain demographic, which is the majority. And then so when they do those what do they call them? When they do those polls, when they do those data analysis scores, then they pick up that data and they show it to the world. Yeah, it looks good.
Let's
Yeah,
read some
but there's-
comments.
oh,
here.
because of a certain aspect.
Let's
anyway.
go to the comments. Let's go to the comment. Hapa Esther Mulusa taking a different take, anasema the Tawe movement is anti-Musalia and Weta, plus it is veering the Luya members away from Baba. We want to stand as a community. It is growing fast and furious. It's aligned to Rigiji. So hapo Esther Mulusa talking about a tribal formation. But yeah, and we're still there. And we're still there. Hapo, that's Esther Mulusa. Hapa Washeke anasema the credible Kenyan politicians have to approach campaigning the way Republicans do it. They have mastered messaging and spreading narratives to win. Washeke then says they don't play nice. They play to win and a long game. Esther further says during last year's Gen Z protests, the governor here, that's in Kakamega County, had his goons causing mayhem, but they were overpowered by the young ones. I think the paid goons in the most recent Nairobi protests are being tracked down one by one. They're getting exposed. This pushback will disable hired goons. And then I have Skylar Roberts here saying there are no utopian institutions that can curb the powers of a president. And then Sasha here says Singapore and Japan have like the best system, and it does not begin leaders. It begins from the grassroots, from even the schools, and how kids are handled. The number to call
No.
is
I
202.
disagree. I disagree with that
Ngoja Mika. Number to call is 202-683-4570. Press star 5 to speak. This is a very hot topic. I think we need to have another episode and just discuss leadership because and institutions
Yeah.
and systems and institutions. Yeah, Mika, let's tufanye tutoke kwa hii topic because sasa
Okay,
tuta-
kutoka
Can I
kwa
give
topic.
my
No,
final
no,
too?
no, no.
She didn't
Yeah.
give her
I didn't give my
final.
final.
Okay, sawa, Mika, give
Yeah.
1 minute and then Sheila 1 minute and then
I wouldn't even
tutoke
take
kwa
one
hii topic.
No.
minute. But I feel like we're doing very...
my final is this. My
Yeah.
final is based on Singapore and Japan and
Yeah.
Malaysia.
Yeah.
Sasha, go back and research. It was actually
Who is
presidents.
Sasha.
She's commenting. She's in the comments.
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Nyia mna
Oh, so-
Facebook.
Pole.
Gen Z hawana
We don't
Facebook.
use Facebook. It's
Yeah.
for
Wow.
Yeah.
it's for
Okay,
fossils.
Sasha, go back and research on those countries, and you will see that in every major change of those countries, it was done by a certain president. Like Singapore, Malaysia, when they were pulled, when the richer countries separated from each other, Singapore, Malaysia, Japan, when the dependent country, it was the president who set up certain. So it was that leader who led the country in a certain way, so that they
Okay.
can be like that. It was not a system that was there.
All right,
I don't
good.
think they're
And-
mutually
and then-
exclusive.
yeah.
I think leaders should work with good systems.
Okay, and then Michael Orlando says Miguna, this is on YouTube. Miguna has a bad name, but he's a good candidate like Donald Trump. He can transform Kenya. That's Michael Orlando. Different opinions. And then Michael Orlando also says PLO would be another good choice. Sheila.
Yeah.
Kizungu mingi tu.
I'll say we're doing very important work of imagining what the future is going to be like and how we're going to fix the country. And I would say that what necessarily worked for previous countries might not work today for Kenya because it's a different time and it's a different country. And we need to focus on our strengths as a country. And one of our biggest strengths as a country is that we have a young and educated population and an active citizenry that can actually push for things. If you see the kind of, not really reforms, but the kind of things that the police are going through this week, there's some things they cannot try to do, like watachoma nchi. So it's not going to work the way it worked for Singapore and Japan. It's going to work differently, and we need to keep doing the work of imagining how it's going to work. I personally believe it's going to be a mix of good leadership and systems, because even in a system of accountability, you can't just have the power being in one person's hand. The power needs to be in the people's, in the systems, and maybe now that leader who you donate that power to. So it's going to take both. At least on Kenya's side, I can say that it's going to take both.
Okay, thank you so much for that submission. But we're going to organize another episode to talk about this leadership versus institutions and figure out.
It's leadership and
leadership and institutions. And the reason why I ask for example sometimes is because even all the good things that have been applied, we are not there are no wheels being reinvented. Like even with our new constitution, with the institutions that are working right now, you know, like everything, when you look at everything at a granular level from Kenya, they've borrowed it. They've borrowed it from somewhere else. So we don't have to borrow everything from one place. We can pick the good from here and the good from here and the good from here, and we bring that together. And you know, most of you were born in the 2000s. That's why it may be very difficult to understand where actually Kenya came from. I always tell this interesting story where my mother was called to school because of an essay I wrote when I was 11 years old. Against President Moi. So that's the kind of country we were living in when I was 11 years old, in standard 5.
Why were you writing bad things about a leader?
Yes, and I can never forget about that. But it was things were that
controlled.
Bad. Yeah.
But aren't we heading there right
but
now?
You see, but the other argument I'm trying to bring in as we exit this topic is Kibaki and Moi operated under the same constitution, under the same institutions, but two entirely different
experiences.
But didn't Kibaki try and reform the constitution?
Yes, he reformed the system
because he saw the systems they're not working.
He saw that the system was broken.
But the system that he worked with while he was president, the new constitution, came at the tail end of Kibaki's presidency. But for the 8-9 years he was in leadership, he was able to provide good leadership under those same institutions that Moi was using, under those same systems that were there during Moi's time. And that's why I tell you, with the institutions we have right now, it will only take a good leader. It will only take one good leader. So let's say, like, for example, if we have a President 𝘍𝑢𝑡ℎ Kibwana is one of my unicorns. If we take a President 𝘍𝑢𝑡ℎ Kibwana and put him in power, I guarantee you, we will get, with the same institutions, same constitutions, I guarantee you, we are going to get very different outcomes.
That's the difference between our generations, is that we are not willing to put all of our hopes and dreams in one person, because people also put those hopes and dreams into Ruto. People also put those hopes and dreams into Uhuru. So we can have our good person by all means, but it needs to be backed by systems.
Fixed,
So I totally agree with you, but again, systems are run by people. Yes, systems are run by people.
Yeah.
And again, I think we're going to have another episode where we're going to have a very vibrant conversation. I want us to talk about the silent crackdown that had been happening since the revolt. There were disappearances, there was a lot of surveillance, and now we are hearing whispers about spyware in Kenya's budget. Like the spyware that's built by the Israelis called Pegasus. This is a spyware that was used to kill Adnan Khashoggi. Those who followed Adnan Khashoggi's case, that's what the Saudi government used to track him.
Sorry, do you mean the journalist from Saudi Arabia?
Yes.
I don't believe
Adnan
that was his
Khashoggi.
name.
Adnan Khashoggi.
Yeah,
Yes, that's
Khashoggi, yes, but the first name.
Adnan, that's his name.
Okay.
Yes,
Alright,
my dear, that's
alright.
his name. Adnan
Jamal
Khashoggi.
Khashoggi.
No, Adnan.
Are we talking about a different person?
Wait.
It was Jamal.
Is it Jamal or is it
Jamal
Adnan?
You know,
Khashoggi.
Adnan, I think, is the
Adnan is
dealer.
the dad. No, Adnan is the dad.
That's the dad.
Adnan is the dad. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Jamal Khashoggi.
Jamal, okay.
Yes, you're right. I was wrong. Adnan is a dad. Jamal Khashoggi is a journalist who was killed by the Saudi government using that software. Now, maybe let me come to you, Joy. Maybe you've read a little bit about this. Tell us what's happening here. We've seen DCI. They killed Robert Ojwang, and just days later, a hawker protesting was also killed. Albert Ojwang. Yeah, but they were able to track Albert to Homa Bay County. What exactly is happening, because zamani ilikuwa ukijificha from police hawezi kukupata. They
Kwanza
have to go-
especially you go Ocha.
Yeah.
No one is finding
Yeah.
you.
But now they can pinpoint you from a foxhole and they will pick you out. So tell us what's going on.
I think Kenyans should not be surprised. I think a leader who wants to remain in power will use everything at his or her disposal to consolidate and remain in power. And I think Kenyans should expect worse and even more crackdowns. If it means buying the multi-million software, they will buy it. If it means killing more young people, they will kill. If it means disappearing more people, they will. Because it all doesn't matter to them. They want to remain in power, and whatever can be done and will be done. And I think Kenyans should remove the idea of appealing to empathy to these people. They don't care. They don't feel the way we feel, or things like those things don't matter to them, because 1 life and 10 lives is all the same to them. The regard for human life is not there. So I think what Kenyans should be more focused on is not, I can't believe, you better believe it, and it's gonna get worse, right? Our focus should be on resistance, right? How do we, I mean, the conversation is that DCI has an office in Safaricom. I don't know how true that is.
No.
I don't know, but that's one of the ways
But they've
people
been
are
using
saying they're being tracked.
They're tracking
Those
using
are the
phone.
people giving
Yeah.
people the phone numbers, and I know Safaricom has come up. I think it's all PR. I think if you know how Kenya works, you know that they're somehow
But-
colluding into some sort
Okay.
Yeah, because it's
messy
either they're
situation.
colluding with Safaricom
Oh,
or they're
okay,
colluding
hold
with
on,
like
hold on,
Nokia,
hold on.
iPhone.
Ngoja Mika, ngoja Malize will come to you. So you're saying
So
that there's
that's
collusion.
that is
Yeah.
what people are saying, is that the telecommunications industry in Kenya is being used by
Government.
Law enforcement.
Ruto, let's just
Yeah.
say, to target people that are being vocal on the internet. And so now that people have a digital footprint, as you said, back in the day, people didn't have digital footprints, right? Now you have multiple accounts that are linked to your phone number, right? Your phone emits radio waves, right? People are able to track using, the cell tower signals. Now that people are more technological, it means that they're leaving behind traces. And if the government has money, they have money to buy and pay people who are skilled to run those systems, right? They have the money and they will track people because they want to remain in power. So what we need to do is to figure out how can we continue pushing, being resistant, being aware that they have the money but we're also smart, and that we're also skilled, and we're also technologically savvy to be able to resist. There's so many, I mean, if you see the woman that was arrested for creating a website
Yes.
to break down
Rose and Jerry.
to break
Yeah.
down the finance bill.
Yeah.
We have someone who's started another one to count votes parallel in 2027 already. Being preemptive is like, let's just get ready, right? Kenyans are very smart, and we should, if they're building tools, we should be building tools of resistance as well. We need to match. We need to match, because we are younger, we're faster. So it might take them months to integrate these systems, but for us, I think it's a lot easier.
See, with 𝘼𝙤𝙀, his once after they killed him, his social media was completely wiped out, gone.
And
How is that done?
I mean, I always have. This is something I've actually been wanting to look into. Is what is the Twitter office in Kenya, and what kind of connection do they have to tracking? Because I don't know the answer, but if someone on Twitter doesn't have a picture, doesn't have their name on there, but they're able to find the phone number. I mean, I listened to a video that said, if the government provides reason to these companies that this person is a person of national interest, he's a national security, they will offer the information under that clause that this person is being investigated as a possible threat to national security. So once they have your account, they find the phone number, Safaricom does their thing.
Okay, let's go to Mika, and then we're gonna come to you, Sheila.
So first of all, let's not give Safaricom too much power that it doesn't have. There is as far as where a cell phone company, where telecommunication companies can go. Safaricom is not involved in you being abducted at all. What Safaricom can do is just ping a phone to a cell tower.
But how do you know that, Mika?
Yeah.
Hold up, let me
Hold
finish.
it,
Because I work in tech. I'm actually speaking. I'm coming back to that. So ngojeni ni wajibu.
Mumeambiwa mutatu. He'll track you.
Ngojeni ni wajibu. So one thing you have to understand is that there are companies whose bread and butter is farming information about you, right? Companies like Palinta, Iokina Pegasus, and these are companies that offer their services to governments and also to companies, employment companies. If you've ever been advised that when you apply for a job, don't use the same email address that you use for your social media because they'll farm everything on the social media and know what kind of person you are. Have you ever gone for an interview, gone to the final step, and then you're on a new job from unashangani nini? But it's something they actually put, and social media companies actually are among the biggest customers of data from social media companies is the government of the countries that you live in. They're always going to buy data from social media, and that data is how they watch people, right? Remember Snowden and how he exposed the NSA is actually looking into Americans while he's supposed to pretend that he's not looking into Americans. Yes, from phone companies, if they feel that you're a person of interest, they can go and ask for things like the numbers you have called. They can ask for text messages. They can ask for data like that. But the phone company will actually just point you to the nearest cell tower. The nearest cell tower can be 5 miles away from you. It cannot pinpoint you to where you are. Now, companies like Pegasus, which are companies that actually can put malware in your phone and start tracking you. You remember when you sign up for Twitter, you give up a lot of your information, your address, your name, your phone number, your email. This is information that we give out public without actually knowing that this is information that is sent out. So when you buy a phone, that phone number that you gave out, and when you bought that phone number that you gave out, you applied for credit somewhere, your social is there. If I can get to your social, I can get to the deepest part of you. These companies do that. And that is why these companies sell this data. That's why you can be able. And when Kenya actually got this software, it was during Uhuru's tenure. It was during when we were having a lot of terrorist attack. The reason they got this software, most countries get this software, is because intelligence right now has become a technological warfare. Intelligence sika kitambo, you had to put a spy in a country. The spy takes pictures and then goes away. Intelligence right now is up to whereby you buy an electronic from China. It's been rigged with a camera recording you, but I hope maybe you can leave your computer open and you work for the government and they can see information. So spyware is working differently and countries have to come out with ways to defend them. Unfortunately, countries also have issues within their borders. And what do? They spy onto their citizenship. The only issue is that these guys using these guys are using facilities that are supposed to protect you to spy on you. So we can be mad at Safaricom and say Safaricom is doing this because it makes a good narrative. It makes a good story to tell. It makes it easy to understand for us to blame something like Safaricom. But no, our government is using infrastructure that's supposed to be protecting us to spy on us.
Now, this is a very interesting point Mika brings up. Na naona hapa Kenya Njui leo ananirushia makumbo, anasema Ali has been an anarchist since he was 11 years old. And then but Kenya Njui, you bring up good points about especially like the schooling that Mika is giving us. And I think part of the reasons why sometimes these narratives thrive is because of mistrust. Now I'll give an interesting story here. Before, during Uhuru's, because these things, they started at Uhuru's time. Uhuru, I think Uhuru is one of the luckiest presidents ever that he had, I would call it a failed presidency in terms of the economy. Like Uhuru did a pathetic job. But then he got a lucky break that he got someone who's doing even worse. So now it's making him look like he was, So it's making him look like a giant amongst dwarfs. So that's where Uhuru is. During Uhuru's time, something used to happen. Abductions did not start with Ruto. So abductions did not even start with Uhuru. you know, with all the goodness that Kibaki had,
Even number one.
there were certain
Abduction
things.
started with his father.
Yeah. So there were certain things that were happening. Now, do you know where the abductions were happening at that time ya Kibaki? Because kulikuwa na hii issue ya terrorism. So they were randomly picking up Muslim kids. Abu Drogo is one person.
No,
If you come from any and Sheila, you can attest to, if you come from any Muslim community, this thing affected our communities in a bad way. And I remember when I used to bring it up those days, like people would even come and label me, oh hey, you're a sympathizer. And what I kept telling people,
actually Sulitu al-Shabaab.
Yes, Sulitu al-Shabaab. Yeah. And you see, what I was trying to tell people those days, you guys are gonna do this when people are being randomly picked until the day itawafikia. So now, easy abductions, that's where they started, but now zikakuja, zikafikia now regular people without names like Ali and Muhammad. Zikawafikia, now it has become a big issue. But back then, we would try to raise our voices on it. And man, social media was so hostile. It was so hostile. Ulikuwa unaitwa Al-Shabaab, unaitwa sympathizer na nini. And that's why I tell people, be very, very careful. Hata hii kitu ya like kids are being executed in the streets, and then watu wanasema ati watoto walikuwa wamesumbua sana. Let it happen. But now that execution has now come to regular vendors who are selling masks. Si ule ofisa alikuwa anaitwaje, ule Rashid, ule ambaye alikuwa akiwa watoto.
Huyo.
Yeah, si people were saying ati
ule Isli.
Yeah, ule Isli alikuwa anasema ati But you see, the problem of allowing something like that is that it's gonna come and be used for personal use. Look at what has happened to Albert Ojwang. Albert Ojwang, this was a case, huyu DIG, I don't know what kind of power this DIG had, because
A lot.
Good
I
question.
think he was given power to do this work for politicians. I think now when leadership, they have someone they want to discipline and everything, they would contract him. Ngoja nimalize Mika. They would contract him. But I think now he felt like hata pia mimi unajua kama vile you drive Benz ya Mdosi, you're the driver, but then every now and then when Mdosi is busy, you feel like you can go see your chick with a Benz. So I think that's what happened. Huyu DIG was the mastermind of doing this for people higher above.
People, yeah.
But now he started seeing hii kitu hata pia mtu mimi akinitukana, I can use it for personal gain. And
Finya.
And I think unfortunately it was one of those situations where unatumia Benz ya driver kwenda kuona demo wako and then unapata accident hiyo siku.
But let's remember that the story that Ojwang broke was a story of corruption, of I don't know how many billions is funneled to this person. So it wasn't even an issue of nimetusiwa. It was an issue of
corruption.
I am at risk because now I can be looked into for corruption.
Yes.
And then the other thing we need to remember is that it's a Cyber Crimes Act that got Ojwang where he was. That act was passed in 2018. And that's the one where a defamation case becomes a criminal case. And all of a sudden, if you insult someone, we can put you in a cell and do whatever we want without proving that indeed Langat is not corrupt. Before we prove Langat is corrupt, you're in a cell.
You're in a cell, yeah. Yeah, so again, you know, like, these are the things that I sometimes, miwa nakaa na smile kando, because I remember back in those days when social media was so hostile, you know, like you try to bring something up.
Like Latinos? That's too soon. Latinos.
No, apana, that's a different
What
story.
about Latinos?
That's a story for another day. That's a story for another day.
I
They're
will
finding
vote
out.
for Donald Trump.
Yeah, they're finding out the wrong way. But I always say, whenever you see, whenever you see, you know, like for example, Miguna being deported and you're celebrating, just know that
siku yako
inakuja. Your day is coming.
Wakikuyu usema shome yako iliko.
Yeah, that one right there. And that's what I'm saying. and that's why
ukiona mwenzako?
Mwenzako akinyolewa, tia maji.
Yeah. So I think that's why I struggle with people like Matiang'i, who are enforcing the deportation of Miguna, you know, like a bona fide Kenyan.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I, you know, like, I'm not doing any purity tests, but for someone like Matiang'i, I struggle. You know, like I struggle with vitu kama hizo hapo.
So kwa huyo unataka litmus paper uone kama inaweza nini?
No, Matiang'i,
Matiang'i is out.
And I'm sorry to say it, his people have and you see the other problem that also happens, because I think people are realizing what's happening. They're now looking for tokens to say, Matiang'i has supporters from other communities. Na hizo ndo game ambazo
kuna
we
kitu
do not play.
tunasahau.
Yeah.
He works for the World Bank.
Yes, he does work for the World
he
Bank.
works for the World Bank.
Yes, he works for the World Bank, which is also, World Bank is also not a very good friend.
Then
of ours, as we think.
His career old school politician. Like, alafu basically tunajua huyu jamaa kukuwa na dea kucampaign inasponsoriwa na mtu. Huyo mtu ni Uhuru.
Yeah, a presidential campaign is very expensive.
Yeah.
It's very expensive.
Wasn't he kind of the de facto deputy during Uhuru's term, right? They've kind of- they had-
Enforcer.
He was
I
an
would
enforcer.
I would
He was
call him
an
an
enforcer.
enforcer. I don't know if I'd call him a
Yeah.
deputy. I would have called him more of an enforcer, as in he's being told,
I
go
see
do.
enforcer.
Okay.
Mr. Fix It.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
Mr.
sorry,
Fix It.
yes,
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
Mr. Fix It.
Yeah. So again, 2 years is not a long time, and in the next episode we're gonna have, I want the two of you to figure out who are the people that we should be looking towards as we're approaching 2027, because at the end of the day, a decision has to be made, and we only have 2 years to make that decision, and that's a very tough decision. Now, outside that,
Wajakoya.
Storia paid protesters, paid goons. This is another thing that we've also seen. It's another tactic that the government is employing, whereby we were seeing that there's legit protesters on the streets, but then there's other guys carrying rungus. I remember back in the day, because unajua mi when nilikuwa mdogo, mi street action ilikuwa ni yangu. There was a group called 𝘽𝙧𝙞𝙀. I don't know if you guys remember 𝘽𝙬𝙀.
Nakumbuka Kamje, tulipigana nao sana.
So 𝘽𝙬𝙀 walikuwa ni goons wa Moi. The Wamoi's goons. So this thing is not new. Hii kitu ya goonery is not new with Sakaja. It's just that Sakaja, I don't think Sakaja properly understands the science of goonery.
Ngumi ni mbweke. And by the way, Sakaja is a Chenjeria.
Unajua nini? Kamje
Yes.
ilikuwa
Changes to Lenana, right?
Yeah.
Lenana school.
An embarrassment to Lenana.
Oh, by the way, ngumi ni mbweke. Ngumi ni Ali, hold on.
Ali, just take your nini.
No.
Ali,
that's okay.
No.
Ali,
Take
ngumi
your
ni
looks.
mbweke.
We're offering him to Nairobi school.
Well, no. Ngumi ni mbweke. Ngumi ni mbweke.
No, we're offering him to Nairobi
Si
school.
ni ngumi ni mbweke.
We're offering him to Nairobi school.
No.
Yeah.
We're not going
But
to accept.
Ali,
Nani Sakaja, I don't think he properly understood
What do you think he failed?
the science of
Where did he fail?
of goonery. No, his people, like 𝘽𝙬𝙀 was so effective. The good thing about being in street action back in the day as kids, they were not bothered with kids. So, and with kids you have an innocence where you're going out, there's kuna rabsha huko, kuna chaos, watu wanapigwa na nini, but where you're out there,
Unapenya.
you want to see the action.
yeah, wale walikuwa kwanza wanakupea mawe urushe.
So those guys, by the way, wanakupatia mawe saa zingine, wanakupatia mawe na kuambia rushia wale watu. But they were so effective, they knew when to come, they would come and they would do their work so quick and they would go.
What is work?
Their work is to,
Disruption.
for example, if you have a political rival,
Okay.
and they're holding a rally and this political rival is popular and you want to go to disrupt it. In fact, back in those days, there was something called Mlolongo. I think you guys are not familiar with what. So Mlolongo, actually KANU had a Mlolongo system until 2002 nominations. They were still doing Mlolongo. So Mlolongos during nomination day, Sheila unakuja, na we Joy unakuja, on nomination day, mnasimama hapo. Then
Behind their candidate.
Then your candidates, then your people who are voting for you, they stand on a line. Whoever has the longer line wins. So what used to happen, and don't ask me how I know this, what used to happen is they would pay people when they know that it's about that time to be counted. So si line yako Sheila ndo iko na watu wengi, na line ya Joy iko na watu kidogo. So now people would go, goons would place themselves strategically in your line. Now, right before, minutes before, like it's called, they all unleash whips. And they're different parts of the line. They unleash whips, wanaanza kuchapa watu. And they're like, so it's like, kuna hapa moja mwanzo, katikati, like in every 10 people.
He was one of the whippers.
So when the whips come out, people are running. Now when the people run, the counting is being done. And that's in one line. So now Joy, the candidate who had fewer people on the line, becomes the winner because all your people wamekimbia. That's why I'm saying vitu vimetoka mbali sana. Yeah. Ballot boxes used to be black in color. Black. Unaona black like this. These transparent ballot boxes, this is a recent thing. So what used to happen, ballot box inaingia and then it already has votes inside. No, it already has votes inside. So when mnapiga kura, you know, like for example, Sheila is a popular candidate, mnapiga kura, and you know, we know that popular, but when zinamwagwa zinahesabiwa, Joy ndo akona kura nyingi because it was the provincial administration. There was no IEBC. There was no electoral commission. Our wanaitwa, now they're called regional commissioners and those are the ones who used to run elections. And this is as recently
so
as
people
the
in
90s.
Government used to be
Yes, so that's why I'm saying
actually not 90s, 2002 election
until 2002 elections there were still black ballot boxes that were being.
So Kibaki won under that.
The reason why Kibaki won is because it was overwhelming.
The whole opposition came together.
It was so
no arguing.
So anytime when the gap is small, and that's the reason why to defeat Ruto, there has to be someone who can garner 60%.
And then
because this close elections. Mika.
Remember for Kibaki to win, you remember that day of voting, everybody was like, vijana, laleni na kura, msiende nyumbani, stay in the polling stations. And actually, what most people don't realize, our millennials when they were young, year 2002, we slept at the polling station to count kura. Like, like we were counting up, we countiwa. So, that is another thing that most people don't usually highlight about 2002. But if the youth in 2002 had not slept in polling stations, that election could have been rigged.
Yes, it would have been rigged. And that's why I'm saying we've come from a very long we've come from a very far place, and that's why I'm saying, you know, like even the idea, unaona kama Tanzania, where Tanzania is today is where Kenya was in the 90s. Tanzania does not have an independent IEBC. Electoral commission. Tanzania does not have so it's whatever the government says. Tanzania does not have an independent judiciary. You know, like it is it's still controlled
you
by
can
the
try an
president.
opposition leader for treason.
Yes, you can
The
try
president
opposition
controls
leader for treason.
the Supreme Court justice.
So Tanzania was politically a black box for me until the recent abductions of
Boniface
and Agatha. I really didn't know much about Tanzanian political. I mean, you know, you hear a little bit in the news. And I think the idea was that they're polite. I always used to say, Tanzanians are just really polite compared to Kenyans.
That has been exposed.
And once that happened, I said, oh my God.
The absence of war is not peace.
Exactly.
Yes.
I was like, this is insane.
What?
The absence of war is not peace.
And actually, and that's called
the absence of war is not peace, because just because things are quiet in Tanzania because they're being managed. Today I was watching some speaker speak in Tanzania, and he was telling people that we need to reserve our peace, we need to support our president, because if we don't support our president, we'll move backwards. You know, like there's a lot of government propaganda that's coming out that's saying, if you don't support our government, we will be very far behind.
It's called weaponization of peace.
That one.
So weaponization of peace, Moi was very, very effective at using that tool, and would always call people who want multi-party politics as seditionists, as watu ambao wanataka kuleta uchochezi.
Treasonous.
Ruto's language.
Exactly.
Do you know how many people how many people during Moi's time were actually charged with treason? Kina Wangamati, Shikuku, Koigi. Moi.
I remember the time when I wrote that essay. That thing was such a big deal at home, you know, and I don't know how. And the funny thing is, I was in Moi school. I went to Moi Educational Center in primary, in South Sea. So that thing became such a big deal. Nyumbani, I remember my uncle, you know, my uncles were being called from Mombasa. It was such a big, it was so bad because.
Do you remember what you wrote? Or do you even have a sample? Did you
You
say?
should
I
have
think,
kept
I
it.
think, I think,
Can you
my mom-
recreate
I
it?
think
Should have
my
been
mom still
framed.
has a copy.
Yeah, you should have
and I
framed
wanna
it.
get it.
Yeah.
Can you recreate
Because
it?
we would like to. It would
Yeah.
be interesting. It would be nice to see what you wrote because.
Yeah.
Huyu
Ukiwa
Might-
hivyo,
yeah.
Author ya Mwakenya huyu.
Yeah, I think my mom still has a copy, and
Hi, Ali, are you sure she kept a copy?
I think so. And I'm you
Ask
know,
her.
I'm gonna,
Because
I'm
you
gonna
know
ask
that
her.
was seditious, bana.
I'm gonna ask
Those
her.
are seditious,
That's
what they call
evidence.
seditious publications.
And let me tell you, the school that I went
AKA
to,
Mwa Kenya.
Eh,
the school I went to, all ministers, Kalonzo's kids were there. Remember, Kalonzo was already a minister at that time.
correct, yes.
Kalonzo's kids were there. Mudavadi's kids were there. You know, like all ministers and all PSs would bring their kids there, and then you know, like the teachers were wives of the teachers were wives of permanent secretaries. You know, like that was the environment.
Ilikuwa
Yeah.
system.
Yeah, I'm not even I don't even know whether I'm supposed to say this, but remember, like the people who were involved in Goldenberg,
Yes.
they were
Yes,
just they
yes,
were
yes.
just busy interacting with them every day. So that thing became such a big deal because nakumbuka hiyo kitu, there were some teachers who liked me and they were able to suppress it, but it became such a big deal at home because back in those days it was treasonous to think about
Correct.
to think about
To
the
even
death
to
Revolution,
yes,
yeah.
to write
Yeah.
anything that was against.
yes
Yes, you could not.
Forget posting a picture
yes
or an AI image.
yeah
Or
just thinking
just thinking
Just the
about
thought.
it.
yeah
Your parents could even know that you've thought about it. Na unapigwa.
yeah just
Kwanza kuna
thinking.
siku mimi na bro wangu tunapiga story, tunaona news alafu tukasema kiki msee kiupenda tu kudalia lift kwa gari za wase. Tuliamwenene mlale karibu tuchapo hiyo siku. Unajua hiki kimsee ilikuwa ni moi. Unajua vile alikuwa anafunguliwa gari anaingia anafunguliwa.
Yes.
Vitu weka hivi ndio naambia bro hiki kimsee lakini kiupenda tu kupewa lift kwa gari za wase. Kwani ni nani? Yes, tulisoma tulifanyishwa GHC, basic GHC. Who's your president? Who's your MP? Who's your provincial commissioner? Who's your DO? Sasa hiyo unajua kiamba who's your MP? Baba Karanja kwa alikuwa neighbor wetu, kumbe ni Mwenje. Unafaa kusema David Mwenje. Hizo siku
Yeah,
like,
so-
we were robots. We
Yeah.
were being programmed on how to
Act
respond and to
and
live.
respond.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the reason why I'm saying, you know, like it's important to also acknowledge the granular gains
Yeah.
that we've gotten over time.
Important.
And I think part of the issue with Kibaki's era, there was a lull because Kibaki was such a different leader. People thought that we can never go back to where
yeah.
Moi was.
Yep.
But unfortunately, Ruto reminded us that that's always very close.
Possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, the number to call is 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak. A lot of comments have been coming through.
My guy.
Yeah,
Usome hizo comments.
yeah, a lot of comments have been coming through. I can't read all of them. Sasha Spice anasema, as an activist, I had to get a software because they always disable me. But this time, Ojwang, they couldn't, but they sent the usual death threats and they
Kenyan-
won't.
Kenyanjui has been
relent.
hitting you.
Yeah, I know.
Combos.
Kenyanjui has been hitting me sideways. Yani, it's been a while since Akuja, but he's been hitting me sideways vibaya sana. Kenyanjui anasema he cleaned town with extrajudicial killings. Skylar Roberts says Mishuki killings of Mungiki. Esther Mulusa says I thought the World Bank denied that Matiangi worked for them. I don't know about that.
No, World Bank has never denied. I don't know
yeah.
if they were ever asked directly,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's been an open secret if it
Yeah.
was. Yeah,
But the guys who have been campaigning for Matiangi, who started campaign in quotes because he hadn't declared, there's a point I was watching a video where one of them said we've been told to not talk about that World Bank story. And
Okay.
where he works.
Actually, from my insiders of World Bank, when he actually was getting the job, there were protests within the World Bank. Folks who were already there, who are Kenyans, who are working there, did not want the guy to work there. So it seems like and whether it's true or not, it seems like there was a hand somewhere, like there was a.
But allegedly.
like there was a.
There was an invisible
There was a
hand.
big brother there who
Yeah.
came and put him there to make sure he stays put.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Please.
Yes.
Thank you.
So he stays put and everything is A-okay with him, and things that
the
were
thing
happening in
is,
Kenya is, and now all of a sudden he came out and he put money down for that company, the ones of numbers? the guys who are doing
The
UK's
guys
campaign.
who count
Betika?
the
Oh, you're talking about
Statistics people.
Cambridge Analytica.
Eh.
Yeah.
Aliwachotea.
Wow. Okay.
I-
Hiyo sasa
Allegedly.
mimi sijui.
No.
Allegedly.
There's even Nini. I'll look for the paperwork. But there's a thing where the guy where he did it and he paid out money because what the whole point of it was to I don't know if it's Cambridge Analytica, something similar. But basically, when you want to go campaign and you want to start,
He was looking at
you
his
do
probability
yes
of becoming
you
the
do
president
a
of Kenya.
but that's not
feasibility.
necessarily
It's called an exploratory.
But- yes,
an
It
exploratory
is
but the
Yeah.
amount of money that he
Yeah.
paid
Yeah.
is not money that you and I would ever think of paying.
Okay. So there's definitely
Okay, we are
someone
talking
like-
about
yeah.
millions, and we're not
okay.
talking about like 5 million or 3 million.
So
I
the
mean, we're
question
talking in
is-
dollars.
So the question is, where did he get the money? That's the question. That's what is
Tunajua
suspicious.
sponsor wake ni nani? Mbona
See, Mika has given you guys leakage.
Sawa,
Me, I
sawa.
won't say just in
So,
case.
Allegedly.
So let me go back.
Naweza pewa tenda nikiingia KE.
Yeah. So hapa Skylar Roberts anasema akili ziko hapa ni kali. Good conversations. Kaongo is done. And then Kenya Joe amekuwa akinipiga makumbo leo anasema Ali, if my memory serves me right, didn't you once mention on this show that you had a part-time gig as one of these goons? No, Kenya Joe, I was never a goon. I have never been
He
a goon.
will deny, and the things that were said by Ali during that particular time are not Ali's sentiments.
No, I have never been a goon, but I was there, you know,
unajua
like
maguni kadhaa?
Adjacent.
seeing
adjacent.
Goon adjacent.
I was
And this
seeing-
is the terminology we talk about. You say it enough times, it becomes truth.
He was gun adjacent.
I was seeing
Kenyan
Gunari-
Dewey, Ali was Kenyan, was gun
I
adjacent.
was seeing Gunari activity, you know, like
You are
meetings
adjacent to
and
it
nini.
then.
Akiwa Nairobi
I was
West
seeing-
You are
pale.
adjacent to it.
and that's why I was saying, Sakaja, you know, like he's not very schooled in the Gunari science. He's not very.
And this
schooled.
is coming from
Because
an expert.
One of the biggest mistakes Sakaja made.
Adjacent.
One of the biggest.
This is coming from a gun adjacent
Adjacent.
expert,
No, one
subject matter expert.
No, one of the biggest blunders Sakaja's goons made is, first of all, they were videoing themselves.
Gaucho.
And,
Social media.
and then the second thing that they were doing, that they also started getting excited and they started looting. You know, when you're goons, you're supposed you have a mission. You have a specific mission and you have to stick to that mission.
One of-
But it's a
Ali,
mission not to loot.
So, no,
Ali.
looting is not necessarily part of the mission. So I think the reason why they got
It's to cause
excited
chaos.
is they saw a gap and they were like, oh, we can take a
Companion
laptop here.
too.
But they're also doing gunnery in the age of social media.
In the yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
So-
yes,
Gun adjacent.
yes.
Are you gun adjacent?
No.
So,
Is gun adjacent.
yeah, Sama Mika.
the one thing that I've liked about how the youth did things is that, number one, they fought back.
Yeah.
Hawa guns wengi kwa waoga.
No, they're scared. They work in groups.
Kwani watu waoga.
Yeah.
And when the youth fought back, right? Uliona kuna wenye walipigwa, ule mwenye alijaribu kuibia Hanifa alipiga jamaa, like alimchapa.
Oh my goodness, Hanifa. You know, like I don't even know
Ale-
what to say.
Ale-
Those are people who are very
alipiga mzee,
courageous.
unaona, like when you fight back and it shows they are cowards away. So mko wengi, when you fight back wanaogopa. The second thing that I like about it is that Gaucho amehepa Kenya, Swale amehepa Nairobi, ameenda ushago.
Niliona video ya Swale,
Yeah.
And I
I
apologize.
like the fact that watu mtaani kwa ground,
Minimal gains.
Yeah.
That are huge.
kwa ground watu wamewambia, unajua nini, unajua nawe ni mamba, sawa,
But that's part of
tukutane,
systems.
unaona. And that's the thing. So I like the fact that the youth are holding them accountable,
Yes.
and they're fighting them back, right? Hiyo ndio difference yenye tunaona saa hii na kitambo.
There's an
Si mnajifanya-
intolerance
okay,
to violence.
oh, mnajifanya nini? Nyinyi ndio mnakuja. Umeona warning imetolewa?
Yeah.
Wasoandudhi wenyewe pia wametoa warning, wanaambia sasa vile nyinyi jifanya nini, ati si atu demonstrate. Hawatu kuja na mandudhi najifanya nini wetu wanakuja kupigana cause guns wengi kuja na hizo mandudhi.
Wanakuja na nduthi. Okay, Sheila, you had
So-
something you wanted to add.
Yeah, it's part of those systems that the people on the ground are saying, like, we're not going to tolerate this thing, and therefore it cannot and must not happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Good point. Hapa Chief Louis anasema, I was just chilling, then boom, the greatest school on earth patch was mentioned, surely. In other news, Swale Sonko, Gaucho and Absalom are being used by politicians. If you look closely, the ground is already hostile such that they can no longer show up at Bunge la Wananchi. Swaleh has run off to Homa Bay. And I saw your linear. I saw your video yake aki apologize.
Back I saying he was going to participate in June 25th.
I know, too late.
And asking for forgiveness.
Yeah, too late you hapo. Kenyanjui anasema, why is Ali telling us this story in third person? Like he didn't have a front row seat to all of this. I was not part of this. Like I will say that again.
Like we said,
and then
he was good
adjacent.
Adjacent. Thank you kindly.
Skylar Roberts anasema, uko sure they are not looking for you. And then Esther Mulusa anasema, Tanzania is still under the throwback of socialism which suppresses dissenters. Joseph Francis, Ruto compared to Moi is a saint based on your discussions. And then Kenyanjui anasema, while they were undoubtedly funny, what made Ridiculous such a hit was that they were the first to truly demystify the presidency. And then Skylar Starehe Boys White Police, Patrick Shaw. Yeah, Patrick Shaw was also a goon police officer. He was used to kill. He was used to kill.
He was like that guy of.
He was a cop for hire.
That cop guy was killing kids. That guy.
Rashid. He was the Rashid of the day.
Back in the day.
He was Scotland Yard.
And then Louis Anasema, the CEO of World Bank, just released a statement this past week wishing him well as he left to run for presidency. That's about Matiang'i. Matiang'i is using a Canadian campaign lobbying firm called Dickens and Madson. He paid the firm $250,000, not Kenya shillings, not Tanzania shillings, but US dollars.
And not Zimbabwean dollars.
Not Zimbabwean dollars, US dollars. And
Just repeat the name of that farm again.
It's called Dickens and Madson. $250,000. That is a lot of money. And then up as Skylar Nasema, Ali, stop educating the goons, please.
Too late, Skylar.
And then Kenyanjui Nasema, Ali, you absolutely have the right to editorialize your past, but the internet never forgets. Once this show wraps, I'm heading back to review the old episodes. So for
wow.
So for now, we'll say you are allegedly goon. Maze Kenyanjui wanakujaga na
goon adjacent.
Yeah. And then Winnie Barnes says, good show and great conversation. The speculation that Safaricom is tracking people is outlandish. Governments use spyware to track people. Once a spyware like Pegasus is inside your phone, it becomes like a digital spy living in your pocket. Reads your texts and emails, listens to your phone calls, sees your photos and videos, turns on your microphone and camera secretly, tracks your location in real time, access passwords in apps like WhatsApp, Signal, or Telegram. And the worst part is you won't know it's there. No pop-ups, no slowdowns, nothing.
There's a show. 60 Minutes did an episode or a segment.
On Pegasus.
On Pegasus.
Yeah, I saw that episode, and I think
very scary because they were tracking a Turkish lady. I think
that was the Turkish lady was Jamal Khashoggi's wife.
Yes,
that was Jamal Khashoggi's wife. So they attacked her phone.
Yes.
So they attacked her phone.
Whatever they did,
they penetrated her phone.
So how do they install this? How does it?
So it comes in innocently.
Malware.
It comes in as malware. It could be a text.
It could be something you click.
It could be a link.
I could send you something, a link or whatever, and you click it. You don't know.
Yeah, and once they have control of your phone, they download everything. They can just go to a computer and see who you've texted, who you've called. They can see everything. They can your camera. Like right now, they can take control of your camera and see what you're doing, what
your
you're
environment, who you with.
Do we remember the time KRA was trying to get our phones once we entered JKI? Do we remember something like that?
Yes. This was last year.
It was recent.
We even did a show about it. How there was a requirement to your phones. You had to declare that your phone. And this was actually last year.
Was it last year or
Yes,
last year?
last time, very recent.
Very recent.
Yeah, it was very recent. So again, the number to call is 202-683-4570.
What wapeni kupiga simu?
Press star 5 to speak. Now I want us to get us to a critical part because tunakaribia sasa pale. And I want us to talk about something that most activists avoid. And can anyone guess what that is? Anyone going once, going twice?
Playing dirty.
No, wachana na hiyo hapo. Hiyo hapo activists talk about it. I want to talk about faith.
Paid activism?
Oh, no, faith, religion.
Oh.
Yes, religion.
Oh, faith, okay.
When people say religion in Kenya, they often, and I'm saying this, like in a very polite way, so Kenyanjui don't come for me. When people say religion in Kenya, they often mean Christianity. Yeah, but they will say religion, but they often mean Christianity. But this leaves, like more than, I think, close to 30% of Kenyans, whether
Very
Muslims or
Indians
other
Indians
groups.
or other
Yeah.
religious.
It leaves them out, kabsa.
Kabisa.
So the good thing is we have, like a good representation of a Christian and a Muslim on the panel. So what I want to know is, especially when it comes to the younger people, looking at morality in a very different way, and resistance, and looking also at resistance outside the traditional religious institutions. Maybe let me start with you, Joy. As a Christian, how do you see Gen Z navigating the contradictions between what the church preaches and what people live, especially on justice? Joy.
So I'm one of the people that believes in the separation of the state and religion.
Church and state. Yeah.
So I think that religion should be a personal experience. I don't think it should be used as a rhetoric in the political space. I personally think when people lead with that kind of religion, I think it's usually with an intention to control people who are religiously brainwashed or have religious psychosis, which is a lot, especially in a country with a lot of poverty. I think that poor people are the easiest to manipulate with religion, because there's not much to really give people hope in such a dysfunctional country. And so you have a lot of people that have religious psychosis, and so when they see a leader who is religion adjacent, even though we know very well that someone like our current president is not religious in the way that religion is supposed to be, but for him it is a tool to control people. And because most of the people in Kenya are below the poverty level, they're going to believe him. And that's why I think that religion and politics should be completely separated. If you are a Christian, good for you, but keep that to yourself. Focus on the work that has been given to you. And if you really, really want us to respect you as a Christian, and as a Christian myself, let it be in your actions.
Why were young people occupying churches? Because that's what started happening.
Because those are the centers of manipulation, and Christianity and politics have become intertwined to control the masses, unfortunately. So you have money being funneled from the state. I mean, back then when Rachel was still had the bravery to still talk to people, I don't know where she went, but back then she would have prayer sessions at State House, religious events paid for, sponsored by the government, which I thought was ridiculous, because that money then was being funneled into churches. Churches are natural campaigning hotspot for campaigning grounds, right? You have people who come to church every Sunday, big churches, 100, 500 people. It's a natural way to find a group of people that you can talk to and give your political information. You also have people like pastors who are seen as figures of authority, and they're very well respected. And so if they're getting 20 million on the side from the government, what is he gonna tell the people on Sunday? This man has been chosen by God to lead us. This is the one he's just, if you don't follow him, then this is our God appointed leader, and we need to follow them.
And remember, he was always carrying around a Bible.
Yeah. Miss
Kasongo.
Yeah. But now, how, we've known, the church has been very influential.
Infiltrated, yeah.
But how are younger people, is this influence infiltrating to, let's say, people under the age of 30? Is this influence of the church infiltrating to them, or how are younger people relating to the church? Is the church, is the power,
I can
diminishing?
speak about myself.
Yes.
I think definitely. For me, the church is not an authority to tell me who and who not, or what not to do. I relinquish that to my own personal experience with my own personal religion, and the kind of decisions that I make are at my person, not being influenced by anyone. And I'm not afraid to criticize in the name, I remember, you can't criticize the man of God. Like, this is the chosen, he can do no wrong, right? I think what people my age is, they're not afraid to see fakeness even in the church, and you're not afraid to call it out. Said you're a fake pastor, and I'm never coming back here again. You teach, your gospel is prosperity gospel. Every Sunday is how can I be a millionaire, right? You have outlandish extreme ideas. I'm gonna call you out, and I'm gonna say, your church is built on foolishness.
Wow.
End of story.
Wow.
Okay, but what about the relationship with Christianity generally? Forget about the church. How are younger people in your experience?
I would say they're definitely becoming less and less religious. I think there is religious trauma in the Kenyan society.
Okay.
Outside of politics, number one, politics I think is a major one. Our Bible-loving president turned out to be a murderer. So there's trauma there. I think the worst allegedly. It's not alleged. But the
Huyu hataingia Kenya.
ni sawa.
Yeah.
So number one, I think the worst strategy any president can do right now is come with the Bible. People immediately I see, like Morara had started, I said, oh my god, are you rooted around too? Because I don't want to see right now a presidential candidate mwenye ameshika Biblia. Nilisema and then anapiga magoti I said, oh no, we have another one. Here's another one. I think young people are becoming less religious because of, one, politicians are the biggest hypocrites when it comes to religion. Number two, the church, I mean, there's a saying that said there's no hate like Christian love. Wow. Churches are so toxic. I mean, churches are just...
And on cue.
on
cue.
So churches have so much, and that could be a whole other topic at how churches protect some of the most evil people.
I'm sorry, will repeat that what you said earlier?
There's no hate
better
like
than
Christian love. The church holds so much hidden. The church can be the most evil place ever because the kind of characters you have in there, they're the most judgmental, the most critical,
look at the evangelicals, the most
selfish.
Here in
It's
America.
insane.
Look at the evangelicals, the clangelicals here in America.
It's insane. And so you have young people who are critical thinkers, right? They've been raised to think about things critically, not to be brainwashed. They see how these people are acting and they say, I'd rather not. And you know, that I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing, but human beings are spiritual beings, right? And so if you have that break of when people no longer have that spiritual side of themselves because everything that is spiritual is being seen or has been very negative, then also they lose a sense of self, I would say. Be breaking away. So
okay, wow, that is so powerful. Yeah, but
there's no hate like Christian love.
Yeah, let me try to
t-shirt baby.
Yeah, let me try to get another perspective. And you know, like for once I'm very excited. I am not the one.
You're not solo beans.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be the one presenting the Muslim perspective because so I'm glad that. But Sheila, I'd like, as a Muslim, you have a unique lens on maybe how faith is sometimes sidelined when it comes to resistance narratives. How are young Muslims in Kenya redefining the role of the masjid or maybe the imams and the ulamas?
Ulama ni nani?
Ulama is a scholar.
The knowledgeable people.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
These are knowledgeable scholars. Yeah.
So
these are people.
So
because you see,
Sheikh ni nani?
and there's a difference between Sheikh is a title, but there's a difference between an imam.
Yes.
An imam is a leader. Okay. You know, an imam, you could have an imam who's leading prayers in a mosque who's not necessarily an ulama.
Yeah.
Understood.
An ulama is someone who's at the level that they can write what's called a fatwa. You know, like a ruling on something when there's something new. Unaona kama easy issues stock supper. You know, like where there's some ulamas who would tell you that e-stock ya General Motors is not halal because they have a lot of income that's on interest. They're giving these loans and they have a lot of interest. So those are ulamas. Ulamas are, like, I would say they're at a higher level than where imams are. And we have quite a few of them in Kenya. So my question again back to you, Sheila, was how are young Muslims in Kenya redefining the role of the masjid, imams, ulamas in the face of injustice? Are Gen Z Muslims also experiencing a crisis in faith like our Christian counterparts?
That's an interesting question. I'll premise this by saying I haven't been in Kenya since 2024, but let me just speak from my perspective.
Yeah.
See you
okay. Since June 25th, I have not been in a post June 25th Kenya. I'll premise like that.
Okay.
I would say that the tradition of Christianity being intertwined with the state is far more extensive compared to Islam being intertwined with the state in a way that it ends up oppressing people. So we don't have that.
We don't have that
baggage.
Yeah.
That baggage of our religion is used to, mobilize us in a bad way. I would say, from a religious perspective, I would say we are calling, or we are thinking of the principles, like in Islam we say that when you kill one person, it's as if you've killed all of mankind.
Yes.
So murder is a very grave sin and crime to be committing. And we also say that when you see injustice, if you should do something about it, but if you cannot do something about it, say something about it. And if you cannot rebuke it verbally, you should at least rebuke it in your heart. For me, those are the things that I go to when I think about the relationship between religion and protest. The other thing that I think we should highlight is that, for example, in the mosque, it's very different from the church. So you would never have, there's no hierarchy of like when your politician comes, you give him the front seat, you do blah, blah, blah. There's no that hierarchy. You have to give them time to speak. It doesn't exist. They're a normal person. And mind you, like in a mosque, there are virtually no chairs. So they're sitting on the floor with us.
Yeah.
So with that, there leaves very, very little room for them to misuse religion in other ways. But I would say the opportunity is that our imams, our scholars, etc., should be a bit more political, but with caution, which is to say that I don't want to see my imam like go out there and tell me vote for so and so. No, but come out with clear rulings on what's happening today politically and say, look, the killing of young people on the streets, that's a no. For me, I felt really sad during the end femicide protests that happened, I think in 2024.
Yeah.
Because I was seeing Muslim women on the streets, but I was not seeing the imams on the streets. I was not seeing let's not talk about like normal people, but like religious scholars. I didn't even see them talk about it. And we were afraid because why? Because especially last year, there were a lot of LGBTQ people in the streets, right? But when it comes to activism, you can't be an isolationist on issues that you align in. Go and sit with those LGBT. You're fighting the same person. You're fighting the same systems. Go and sit with them and say that, hey, killing people is wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with them 100%. It just means that we need to come together on this. We can't refuse to go to end femicide protests because there are going to be LGBTQ people there. I refuse that. We can't refuse to go to maandamano or to talk about let's say Ojwang or anti-Ruto. We can't refuse that because there are people who are in those crowds who we don't align in. You will never align 100% with everyone. And as long as, of course, we're not telling you go align with murderers and thieves, but there's some issues where we should be willing to work together on.
I think
you bring in a very interesting perspective in the sense that we have the opposite problem. The opposite problem in the sense that, and this is just not me, and I'm glad there's someone else who's saying this. So,
are you sure you guys didn't rehearse?
So from the Muslim side, no rehearsals.
No, Ali, I have to ask because Ali brings, I'm enjoying you, but Ali brings these things.
Yes.
Ali, because he's a one-sided, what is it, should I say Muslim activist or voice?
No, you see.
In the studio. In the studio, basically.
Yes, in the studio. I'm the only solo Muslim voice. And in a lot of these Kenyan spaces, I always find myself as the only Muslim. So there's certain things that people talk about. I'm like, okay, you're experiencing it as a Christian in Kenya, and I empathize, but that's not what we're experiencing. So like for especially that crisis in theology or crisis in the faith, it's not, they're not saying that there are no Muslims who are at crisis, but it's not, it's really
it's not on Christianity levels.
It's not on Christianity levels. Yeah, and then the other thing that Sheila mentioned is that the other opposite problem that we have is that our ulamas, they stay away from these controversial issues. They stay away from this. One thing that I thank God for, and I think it's also because of the way a mosque is set up. A mosque is a 7-day-a-week operation from 4 o'clock in the morning to 9, 10 p.m. Seven days a week.
Correct.
So there's no room for, because when it's prayer time, it's prayer time. And whoever got there first, it doesn't matter whether it's a president or a peasant. There are no chairs. There are no chairs. There's no hierarchy. So I think that has been a protection for us in disguise, because a Muslim politician even his first instinct is not the mosque. Anajua the mosque is the last place.
You'll see them in a church before you see them in a mosque campaigning.
Correct.
And that's
There's
why
gaps in the churches.
That's why I really rebuke politicians like Nyali MP Muhammad Ali when I see them go doing in a church what they would never dare go do in a mosque.
They would never dare.
They would never dare
to do it.
They
in
would
a
never
mosque,
even
yes.
dream about
Yeah,
it.
Ali,
So I really feel bad when I see these Muslim politicians go in churches and
causing havoc.
abuse the worship time, because you know,
Yes.
like when it's
Yes.
worship time,
Yes.
that's a sacred time, whatever
Correct.
religion you're in. So you have this, you know that you're not supposed to do this, but then where unaenda kwa kanisa, you start giving a speech during worship time. To me, like the Muslim politicians who do that, and they would never dare
It
do
would never
that.
work.
They can't. How they wouldn't be
in a
given an
mosque.
audience
Yeah.
in a mosque.
But then
So
Go ahead.
you also
Go ahead.
have to take into consideration
Audience.
which churches they do this in, and you also have to take into consideration what is the basis of that church being created. Religion and politics have gone hand in hand since time immemorial. We cannot pinpoint a specific time whereby politics and religion has equal. Ottoman Empire, when people are looking for the Holy Grail, all of that was kings, leaders using the church in certain ways, and the church manipulating leaders and like putting on kings on how they're going to manipulate and lead the world. It's always been a complex power sharing thing between those two institutions. Now, the churches that have been formed right now in Kenya as political vehicles,
Yeah, they were funded by politics.
those churches were funded by money.
But
from
let's be fair and say
politicians.
the Catholic
and they were used. They were funded by politicians, and they were used as a way of the politician bringing laundering money or whatever it is they were doing, or even just building that church. Ali, you are a pastor. You are charismatic. You can talk to people. But I know for you to reach certain numbers of people, you need a certain amount of loop. You need a bigger church. You need more outreach. You need everything. Your congregation can't fund that for you. I come in, I'm a politician, and I donate to you. And when you preach to your people and you tell your people, unaona vile kanisa yetu imegrow, ni Mika. Ni vile Mika ndo ametusaidia. Mika ndo mwenye Mungu ametutumia kwetu akuja tusaidia. Your congregation is going to be thankful to me as their savior, of saving their church, of building their church, improving it, and making it big. Thus, by proxy, they become my voters.
Wow.
Like that is my base by strength. Because when they think that huyu jamaa akitoka kanisa yetu inakufa, huyu jamaa akitoka alifikisha kanisa yetu hapa, right? Anafanyanga hivi through nini? Tukienda kwa church, tukienda church kulia tuko na mashida zetu, pastor anamuita na tufanyia harambee na tusaidie. Like undo Mungu work through jamaa.
You know, it is so sad that that people are using churches for this purpose. I think what has also protected us as Muslims is that, first of all, you cannot just give someone money and then tell them nendo kafungwe, because even with most mosques you will never even know who built
owns
it.
Yeah.
You'll never know who. There's no such thing as owning a
Yeah,
mosque.
sorry.
And then the other thing is that you cannot just be charismatic and go become, you know, like a religious leader, an ulama or an imam, because there's a barrier of Muslims have this culture of memorizing the Quran. So if you're even a quarter schooled, you cannot go speak during a Friday sermon, because ukiwata kwa mosque, like if the imam, for example, in reading a verse of the Quran makes a mistake, you know, like even a 9-year-old will correct him, like even a vowel that's said incorrectly, because there's this culture that we've had. So it's kind of like a self-check and balance. So it's very difficult to call Ali ati Ali you're charismatic, we sasa nenda ukaongoze ile msikiti, you know, like it will, utasimama kwa hiyo mimbar, watu wanakawa na kuangalia na
Umesema mimbar?
Mimbar.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I
Correction.
actually think though that no religion is spared from state gymnastics. Like if any religion can and is most often used by the people in power to stay in power.
Yes, that's true.
It
But
could
the-
be. It could be Kenya. It's Christianity, but other countries it's Islam that's being used to remain in power, right?
Yep.
Because religion is so it has the power to really capture people's minds and to really brainwash them into following certain people. No religion is immune, no matter how perfect it is. No religion is immune to being misinterpreted by people in power so they can remain in power, no matter how tight it is.
Let
That-
me hear
that
what
is
Sheila,
very true.
let me hear what
It is-
Sheila has
it
to
is-
say
it-
about
it-
that.
it is well, it is the only beacon of hope for so many people.
Okay, but let me hear what Sheila.
And that is why you will find that there are some people who will use the teachings of religions and the words of religion to push for a certain narrative, to push for a certain ideology, to inflict, because depending on the hopes that specific target audience is hoping to look for, they will exploit that.
That hope, yeah.
They will exploit that hope easily through that religion that is dominant over there, or that religion that they know. If we go through this way, we can be able to control a certain narrative. And that is why I said when I spoke earlier, religion and power, or religion and governance, have been married together since time immemorial. Like every historical event that has happened has always had an intermarriage between the two. Be the time of the Khan, be it be the time of Henry the Great, be it the time of what's his name, the time of the Ottoman Empire. Regardless of what power was controlling the world at that particular time, there was some religion married now. Even right now, our supreme leader in this country and evangelicals do F together.
Let me hear what Sheila has to say about this, because I have a slightly different take, but let me first hear what Sheila has to say.
I think it goes back to the religious education that people are given, because it's the people with, sorry to say, but people with less religious education are more likely to be susceptible to these things.
Yes.
And then there's also like a cult. Okay, like I'm seeing Joy Shekhar, but for example,
No, because we have a very
Disagree.
different experience
Yeah.
as Muslims, and that's why it's good to talk about this, because I've always been in these conversations, and I'm like, I've
But
also
the
lived
same
in
can
Kenya.
be said about Christian. Like if you really followed the Christian values, you would not be doing
before-
certain things.
yeah.
And if you do
Okay.
certain things, it's
But
because you
now
are not
see-
really
but now
Christian,
you see, But now you see, experientially, when you look at the countries where majority people are practicing Islam, for example, what is happening is that it's the very opposite, is that the people who are in leadership are telling people we are running away from Islam. It's the very opposite. If you look at Egypt, because I think that I think where like people sometimes are slightly mistaken, they look at two countries. They look at Iran and Saudi Arabia, and that is a very, very small percentage of the Muslim world. When you look at
That's
the
true.
majority of the Muslim world, the most populous
Indonesia.
Muslim country is Indonesia. There's no people there practice freely. There's no religion in politics. When you look at, for example, a country like Egypt, like totally
the religion is the opposition.
opposite. Yeah, the religion is the opposition. It's a
Yeah.
very opposite. If you want to get leadership, you go and say, me by the way, you Islam wache kaikando. If you look at Tunisia, it is a very, very
But
opposite.
the same thing can be said about
Yeah.
Christian, that there is countries that have successfully been able to have prosperous countries, even though the main message
Well,
is
Europe.
that
Which
the
country?
main message is I don't have one at the top of my
No,
head. But
Europe, no,
Yeah.
no.
The point
for
is
her,
that
countries,
can,
example of
religion
countries for her.
can be used. Religion can be used as a tool to
Okay,
control.
I get you.
It
Yeah,
can. It's not
yes.
always is, but it can. Be
That is
used
right,
as a way
but
to
what we
control
like
people.
pointing out is that yes, religion can be used and misused, but what I like pointing out is that the Muslim experience is entirely different, and that's where I premised this with the interchangeability of Christianity to mean religion. It's a very different. It's a very, very different experience, both at a personal level, and also because at a personal level we don't have a crisis as much as I see with the average person in
But
Christianity.
Ali,
So with the leaders, they are very scared of actually being tagged as a Muslim. It's a very opposite problem we have. Mika.
Ali, so you mentioned something. Let's even look at it on the Christianity part of it, right? And that is why I said, ukiangalia and religions is usually, there are some churches which have been built specifically, purposely for politics. And that is a tactic in Kenya. And if you look at it compared to the broader religion, the broader church, the major churches in Kenya are two: Anglican and Catholic. Catholic is the biggest church in Kenya, alafu Anglican. Alafu tuko na 10 million evangelical, there's a name they have. Prosperity Gospel Churches, ndio? Hiyo ndio zinazoitwa. Prosperity Gospel, like hizo gospel churches, right? Tuko na million, mingi. Right? We have a lot of them. And those are the ones that actually are used specifically by this politician. For the mere fact that if we prey on people's hope, and the biggest hope is poverty in Kenya. Shida ya watu wengi Kenya ni poverty, si ati nini, na si ati poverty ati ile ati naishi kwa nini, hapana. Kenya kila mtu angekuwa anaweza ku afford kanyumba kake na watoto wasome,
That would be
a
enough
very
for
happy
most
country.
people, yeah.
Yeah, watu
People are not
si
asking
ati-
for much.
Yeah, watu wataki ati kwa mabilionea ama sijui mamilionea manini, hapana. Comfort, basic needs. If people could get basic needs, we'd be a very happy country. Now, if you use opulence as a means of distraction, you'll get a lot of people in a place where poverty is there. That is why we glorify thieves in that country.
So
Tunaona hiyo tunataka kuiona, na hizo churches zinakuja na hiyo. Hizo churches zinakuja na pastor na drive Benz, sijui anafanya nini. Mtu anaona hapa nikishika dini vizuri hapa, alafu najua kuna wale watu wana recruit wangu, unaona njia yake unaona moyo yake Mungu yani, like you're praying for wealth. Umesahau, when you pray for wealth, God gives you work. Akupeangi wealth, anakupeaga kazi. Ukifanya kazi utabuildio wealth. Lakini juu unaombea wealth, unafikiria Mungu anavyokupatia pesa, auoni hizo kazi anakufungulia hapo, unadharau kazi ndogo ndogo juu unaweza grow. So in yourself, wewe mwenyewe, your beliefs are wrong. So you'll be swayed and you'll be used in all ways that you can be used.
okay, aya sawa. Acha tusome some comments up as we are coming to close to wrapping up. Kenyanjui anasema, I love this Gen Z energy. They are not just praying for change, they are voting, organizing, and calling it out. Kenyanjui further says, unlike older generation, Gen Z doesn't see faith and activism as mutually exclusive, while past generations were made to believe that speaking out against injustice was somehow rebellious or wrong. Gen Z isn't buying that, and I love to see it. Skylar Roberts anasema, Clangelical sounds right. And then Kenyanjui says, the beauty of it is that these older tribal generation politicians don't have a software update for Gen Z. They have no idea how to deal with them. You can see it in the streets. They are not shaken by tear gas or abductions. The government is at wit's end trying to figure out these kids. Like I said, there's no patch, no update, no manual for these generations. And then Upper Sasha Spice Africa anasema, to be honest, I admire the Muslim ways since I started living in Zanzibar. I'll give an example by something I've observed, although I can't say the same for Mombasa, but I can say it for Zanzibar. Like the way most Christians behave on the beaches with Wazungus, you will rarely see a Muslim girl with a Mzungu on the beach. Also, they build as a community unlike us. I know those won't sit well with many, but their ways are a bit better than us Christians. All in all, I dropped religion because of the hypocrisy in religion. Muslims have their weaknesses, but nothing compared to Christians. And then Washeke anasema, and the Muslim world have had some of the most progressive democracies with women leaders. America has never. And then Apa Kenyanjui anasema, Joy, name one country where distancing yourself from Christianity has ever been considered a smart political strategy. Just one. And then Washeke is giving examples of Muslim countries with women leaders as Pakistan, Bangladesh, and then and I think also Indonesia. Indonesia has also had a woman leader. And then Kenyanjui anasema, unlike in many Muslim majority countries in the West and in Christian nations like Kenya, wearing Christianity on your sleeve is actually the smart political move, which is what I think I want people to understand. I think with Muslim countries, if you try to wear, you know, like Islam on the sleeve, and then people put you to that,
You'll be called radical.
people put you to that standard of leadership
And
in a
you
Muslim
fail.
country, and you fail, it's gonna be so it's quite the opposite. You know, like everybody will fashion themselves.
It's not
you
an
know,
advantage.
it's not
for
an
you.
advantage.
It's actually
Yeah.
a
And you-
disadvantage.
it's a
Yeah.
You'll never be the savior like for example in Saudi Arabia, why they're moving away from religion is
Yes.
because they know that and they're trying to de-Islamize their populations, that if someone comes and says they are the Mahdi or the savior, everybody is going. Everybody, the army, everybody, kila mtu anaenda.
Unajua,
The loyalty.
funny thing-
Mhm.
the funny thing about-
ngoja Sheila
No,
malize.
sorry,
Yeah.
Sheila, nimaliza, sorry.
In that religious setting, the loyalty is not to that king or bin Salman, whomever. The loyalty
Yes.
will be to whatever religious figure emerges.
Yes, so I think, you know, like it's
I have a question for you guys, but finish.
yes. Okay, you go ahead and ask your question
No,
first.
I want Mika. Let me.
Mika, go ahead, and then Uno.
No, for me, my question was like, it's good you brought that Saudi Arabia aspect on it, because right now we are seeing a crisis that is happening that can cause World War III, and in that crisis, in the middle of that crisis, there's somebody who's a religious leader of a very huge number of Muslims, very huge number of Muslims.
Yes.
And this is somebody who, if, let's say, for example, they decided to take him out.
Ayatollah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are we going to say that at this point there will be consequences whereby politics and religion will merge because he's being taken out politically?
That will be one of the biggest blunders that America will ever make if they take out, you know, like the Ayatollah. And remember, the Ayatollah is the spiritual leader of
The Shias.
the Shia Muslims. The Shia Muslims, they're like about 15% of the entire Muslim population in the world. But if they do that, and the Shias and Sunnis, there's been rivalries dating centuries, dating 1400 years ago from when after the Prophet died. But if they dare make that mistake, that is a point when the Sunnis and the Shias will come together. It hasn't happened for a very long time, and I think that's part of the reason why, you know, like people are trying to advise against it. If they make that mistake, that's when these two groups will come together, and when that happens, I think, you know, like things are gonna get very ugly. Because look at one thing I have to give respect for the Iranian leadership, whether it's a spiritual leadership or whether it's a political leadership. They are the only ones who stood up, you know, like when Palestine was being bombarded. Because look at all these Muslim countries. Look at all of them.
I've asked you this question.
Yes, look at all of them. Cowards. Jordan.
I am disturbed.
Saudi Arabia. All of them cowards. But now you see part of the problem is that see how America likes promoting democracy in Africa, but they're very comfortable dealing with dictators in the Middle East. You know why? Do you know why? It's because if they try the democracy experiment in the Middle East, you know who's gonna win? The people who are gonna win are the religious people.
Yeah.
And we saw it where? In Egypt. When they tried that experiment, Mohammed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood is the one who won the
Became
election.
president, yeah.
So America did not like that. So they took him out and they brought back a military dictator. See, because of saying Hosni Mubarak ametolewa because he's a dictator. So they put democracy and they thought they would get their guy in there. So in Muslim countries operate very differently. If they do democracy, all these paper tiger leaders that you see in the Middle East, you know, like the Muhammad bin Salmans and all these kings in Sijui, Qatar, and if they make a mistake of doing democracy, it will be very shocking. It's very different, and I think part of the difference is what Sheila was pointing out. There is no personal crisis of the faith. We know, like, most of those Muslim countries are led by people who are corrupt. Most of them are planted by the West, because these Middle Eastern borders, African borders, were created in the Berlin Conference. Middle East, that was in 1884. Middle East borders were created after the end of the World War I, when the Ottoman Empire fell and the Khilafah ended, and these borders were made in an agreement called Sykes-Picot. So all these tiny countries you're seeing, Bahrain, Qatar
was supposed to be split between the French and the British.
Yeah, they were split between the French and the British. So this actually, they are in the image of Europeans. They are not representing the aspirations of their own people, which is very different. That's why ukiangalia hizo countries, you know, like America is happy to keep those leaders there. So they tried to do the same thing in Iran, where they put the Shah, but there was a rebellion and there was a revolution that brought in the Ayatollah in 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini. So now what they're trying to do, they're now trying to reverse. They're trying to reverse this again.
So I have a question. So the Ayatollah, right? I have 2 Iranian dear friends, and you know, one thing I think I've learned from them is I think the best people to talk to about their countries are the people from those countries. And I think social media has a lot of information out there. And I was shocked because once I spoke to them, and we had very different, and of course their opinions matter more than mine because they have experience. Right? Let me finish on that. So I talked to them about what's going on in their country, and I was concerned, and I said, you know, I'm really sorry, you're being bombed by this other country. And they told me, we're actually very happy that our country is being bombed because we want a regime change. We want this man to be taken out. So according to them, they believe that Islam colonized their old cultures, that they were not Islam before the Islam colonization, and they want those people taken out because they've been responsible for so many human right abuses. So I talked to them, and I was very surprised because according to me and according to my information, you know, Israel is the aggressor. They should not be bombing Iran. But according to these people, and these are, you know, one of them is young. She thinks she's in her 30s, and the other one is in her 60s. They're excited. They're like, we can't wait for a regime change. So I think the point is, I think connecting with the people from these countries, more than 1, more than 2, more than 10, to really get the other side of what the people think. They're the people that have lived in these regimes for over 40 years. They know a lot more than what we get from reading a few tweets that are trending on the internet.
Yeah, so in Iran, there's 2 schools of thoughts. My immediate superior, who I've been reporting to for the last 10 years, is Iranian. So we talk a lot. So there's 2 groups of Iranians. There are those who came to the US when the Shah fell in 1979, and I compare them to the Cubans in Miami who came before Castro, when Fidel took over. When Fidel took over, you know, like, and they've always been against him. But there's another set of Cubans that you'll talk to that will speak very nostalgically about Fidel Castro. Right. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing in Iran. You know, like, because the Shah was imposed by a Western power, and then after things got so hot, he was overthrown. Then so with the Islamic Republic, it was just going back to where it was before before the Shah came in. So of course the people who lived under the Shah were, there was a bit more liberal values allowed. Most of them left and came to the United States, and they've lived here since then. So if you go to the mosques and speak to, now Iranians who lived under Ayatollah, they will tell you something entirely different. So you'll find these different experiences. And then the other point you brought up.
Who do you think has a more valuable? I think it is the people who are currently existing
Yes.
in the country, because the people that left, they're frozen in time, as we were talking,
Yes,
right?
and I'm talking to you about people who, like the people we see in the mosques. These are people who were living there maybe until 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
They'll tell you something entirely different. Now, you talked about a previous religion that was there before, and the Persians are very proud people before Islam, because Islam is only slightly over 1400 years. Even Arabs were not Muslims, they were also pagans, and they had other different beliefs.
Religions,
They used to worship idols and everything. So it was new, in all these spaces. So the Persians used to be people who worshipped fire. Zoroastrians, wanaitwa Majus. Yeah, they used to worship fire. So that was their ancient religion, and they're actually Zoroastrians until today.
Yeah.
They're still there until today, and they are very proud people. They're very proud of their identity. So those people they are still there. They're in existence. And what happened at that particular time, because I also tell people in Kenya, people look also, there's this conflation of Christianity and Islam. In Kenya, Islam has been practiced from, I think, the 7th century. The oldest mosques that you can find in Lamu, they were built in the 7th century. That's a little bit slightly 200 years after Prophet Muhammad died. So it's been there for centuries. So Islam is fairly new, even in the Arab world, when you speak in the grander scheme of things. And this is why I say, it's sometimes also very important to talk to people like the way you are doing it, and also get these different perspectives.
Very important.
Yeah,
It's very
if you talk to
important.
Iranians, they'll give you different things. The one thing that I'm worried about those, because I've talked to my boss a lot, this has been very deep in her. She was actually having a wedding for the daughter this weekend, and she was telling me, the mood is not even there because of the countries being bombed. What I told them to be careful about, as you're celebrating seeing Ayatollah being assassinated, remember Libya. Remember Afghanistan.
Yes.
All these places, those dictatorial or whatever you want to call them leaders were taken out. I mean, there's not even one example where everywhere America has touched, it has turned to dust. And that's the one thing I tell them, keep thinking about it. Yes, maybe he's not the best leader. Maybe he doesn't, maybe there's oppression in this, but think about it. Would you rather this, or would you rather Libya? Libya is right now being controlled by warlords.
Pirate terrorists.
Yes, it's being controlled by warlords. Wanasema hii Beltsville, hii ni yangu. Ukitaka kuingia hapa, if you want anything, you have to talk to me, and you have, Tuaregs, protecting you around the area. So that's something that people need to think about critically. Let's be honest, America is not going to liberate anyone. No. They're not doing this for liberation reasons.
Absolutely not.
We already have experience in Iraq. We have experience in Afghanistan.
Somalia.
We have experience in Somalia. We have experience in Libya. We know that there's no liberation. Before to Sahau, because your time inaenda, 2027 elections.
No, before you go there, I had a question, and I wanted to ask. And I know this is gonna touch, because during the Senate hearing, when the Murkomen,
Sifuna,
Kanja,
and Amin.
Yeah. Did Amin swear on a Quran?
Yes.
Those people have been lying under oath.
Yeah.
And that's
yes.
I know with Kanja and Murkomen.
Yes.
Standard Christians lie. That one I'm convinced. I'm not even going to bat an eyelid.
Yeah. No.
For me, it is the reverence with which, with respect to my brother here, it's the reverence with which, like, there are certain things I've learned, being a Muslim.
Yeah.
There are certain things about like lying, or like if interest or riba, like it's what do you call it? It's
Haram.
haram.
Yeah.
Such things. Just even lying. A guy swear and then lies.
But this is
Yes.
what we were talking about. Any religion can be used
No,
when
no,
it
it
comes
is-
to the
Yeah.
corridors of power.
It is, but
Nothing is out of the
but I think
out of the
for me,
cards.
yes, I'm in that Christian space, but still, it's the fact that a religion that I really look at to be very, accurate, pinpoint. Not. There's no wishy-washy. Like it's like okay, these guys or
Well,
whatever.
let me tell you.
But I could be wrong.
Human beings,
I know-
though.
I- you
Human
know,
beings.
Wha-
It
one thing-
doesn't
Kenya,
matter.
though.
One thing I want Joy to understand, one unfair advantage, I call it unfair sometimes, that Muslims have, is that we do not debate about what the Quran says. There's no debate about it. Even amongst, people who disagree on so many different things, even amongst people who are not following. So, for example, if you see me drinking at Swahili Village, I'm not going to come back and say that, nimekunywa kidogo too, so it's okay. So I'm going to be drinking and I will know that I'm doing something that's wrong. I think that's one big fundamental difference where there's no debate that you can drink kidogo, ama you can
Cherry picking.
There's no for cherry picking.
There's no cherry picking. So like when you're doing
You're
it,
black or white.
it's black or white. Like
Yes.
if, for example, you're engaging in sexual shenanigans before you get married, you're doing it, but there's no such thing at it's okay, nini. So
So
that's
taking the car for a test drive.
So that's one big fundamental difference.
Stop laughing.
That's one big fundamental difference that we have. And another big fundamental difference that we have, if you've been brought up in even, let's say, an average Muslim household in America and even in the US, because I've lived in the US long enough now, you see these things being practiced. The reason why it's very easy to find a 9-year-old fasting during Ramadan is because they're seeing other people doing it.
Right,
So,
right.
And you're seeing people praying 5 times a day. And that's not going to make you perfect, because I know there's sometimes this
Absolutely
argument
not.
that comes
Absolutely
that
not.
imagine this guy was praying and then the other day nilimwona nakatia them. By the way,
no.
by the way, it's not going to make you perfect, but at a personal level, there's always a constant check and balance. Like kama nimeplan kukutukana, there's always a constant check and balance that I'm having, like 5 times a day. I have to go back and I know this sounds like a very foreign concept in a world that has become so anti-religion. It sounds like a very foreign concept, but every time, and that's the reason why, unaona sasa vitu kama riba, these are things you hear being talked about from when you're very young. So like even when I'm going to a bank, I'm trying to find out which accounts do you have that have no interest.
free.
Yeah, and part of it is because of things that you see, is because of experiential things that you see being done.
It's environment you've grown up
Even
in.
I'll give you an
Simple.
example. Even wearing a hijab, because you grew up, like seeing your mother, your aunt doing it, and you started doing it yourself. Because it's not, a lot of people tend to think there's the only countries that compel women to wear hijab, maybe Saudi Arabia, maybe and Iran. Muslim countries, you're free. You go to Turkey, you go to Indonesia, you're free to do it, but you'll still find women doing that. So that's just one fundamental difference. I like pointing out because I think there's this confusion that and I say this very empathetically, the crisis that's there within the average Christian, within the Christian faith, is also there amongst Muslims. What I've seen from my experience is that the older we grow, and I'm seeing this with my cousins, even people like, for example, who never used to wear hijab when they were younger, I get very surprised. And nyumbani, as they grow older, it's quite an
unusual
opposite.
scene.
It's an opposite effect, and that's why I like pointing out there's a difference. And I think it's important we talk about this, because there's sometimes a tendency to assume that this experience that Christians are going through both at a personal level and at a level of where politics is being infused, is the same experience that Muslims are going through. So I think that's just the
I
one
have
thing.
a fun fact.
Yes, fun fact.
It's not very fun. It's just a fact. Did you guys see that his name is Amin, right? The DCI,
DCI.
right?
Yeah.
Was used to be he was a witness for the ICC cases in 2008, and I think he was one
I
of
did
the
not know
witnesses.
that.
They have a picture. You know how they used to wear the
The
headphones?
headphones,
He
yeah.
was there. He was one of the witnesses, and I think he was one that flipped and did not do a testimony against the accused. And I think this is more of like a thank you,
Or a gift.
situation.
Yes. Yeah.
But they found the picture of him
Aye.
with the headphones at the International Criminal
Wow,
Court.
that must have been Gen Z sleuths.
And it was trending, yeah.
Another interesting thing, if you look at Muslim majority counties in Kenya, if you're religious, you will never be elected. Look at all the Muslim majority counties. It's very opposite. Look at all Muslim majority counties. If you're the religious one, you will never get elected. It's very opposite in northern Nigeria, because I've been studying the systems in northern Nigeria. Because northern Nigeria has 36
It's
states,
Muslim, yeah.
18 are Muslims and 18 are Christian. It's very the opposite in the northern Nigeria. In northern Nigeria, out of the 18 governors, and I don't know whether that's the same fact until now, 5 of them are what you call Hafiz. A Hafiz is someone who's memorized the whole Quran. That is something very difficult. It's something very difficult, and by the time someone is getting to that point, but in Kenya, it's quite the opposite. If you're a Hafiz and you're in one of those Muslim, no one will ever vote for you. So
But
it's a
that's
very
interesting.
opposite.
I wouldn't
it's a
even
very
say no
opposite
one
dynamic.
would vote for you. I would say the amount of contradictory things that are contradictory to your faith you would have to do to get to the
To get-
position where
yes.
someone can elect
Exactly,
you
yeah.
are a lot.
So it's very opposite. Ukiangalia northeastern counties, coast, you be even jaribu tu kusema, like kuleta mambo, which
Joho is not Muslim.
he is.
He is, but
But not really.
Is Joho and
He's
ulama.
not religious.
He's not.
That's
He's
the
not a
key.
religious
He's-
leader.
There you go.
Okay,
That's
okay.
yes.
Ulama.
No,
kwanza.
ulama, no. The other one, the guy who has memorized the Quran.
Hafiz. Yeah.
Jehovah
He's
Hafiz.
not.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, and you see, the thing is,
What
and-
if he was, though?
Yeah,
I
and
don't
that's
know.
why I like talking about this, because it's a very opposite experience that we are seeing, whereby there's some religious people who now in Mombasa wanaenda wanaambiwa, we bana, we basi we ndo utaongoza kwa uadilifu, but yeye mwenyewe
They don't
anakataa.
want to. Yeah.
Anasema, like, I don't want to do that. So there's a very opposite experience. Are Gen Z is gonna vote in 2027
Absolutely.
because
I never voted.
Mulikata.
Nisikuvote.
Mbona
I
ulikata?
was a political sleeping princess before.
Eh?
Political.
Say it in English and don't add the princess there.
We used to call them sleeping giants in high school. You know, when you weren't performing well, and the teacher would always be, "You're a sleeping giant. You're a sleeping
Hao ni wale ma
giant."
sleeping beauty walikuwa nangoja Prince coming akuja wapicha wabusu.
I was a sleeping beauty in terms of
Political sleeping
political.
princess.
I was a political sleeping princess before I got radicalized a year ago, and for me, it was all just so noisy, because it just all felt like it was so much mediocrity, and I was just not interested in the kind of mediocrity that I was seeing on the internet.
So
But
what
then
changed?
You quickly realize the political is personal very quickly. The things that you're experiencing every day.
Yes.
The reason I wake up and I don't have a job as an educated 20-something-year-old is not because God hates me, or it's because I made a mistake, 1 or 2 or 3 mistakes.
It's the
It's because
institutions.
the country isn't working. The country isn't working. Institutions are not working. So you start to realize the reason you don't have a job, the reason your parents are struggling, the reason there's so much classism in Kenya is because of the government. And for me, I think the turning point when you stop being a consumer and start being an active participant of politics in Kenya. For me, it was seeing the Gen Zs that passed away and their dates on the gravestone.
Yes.
It said 1999, 2000, 2001,
that was
2002.
painful.
Seeing that it kind of put a switch in my mind of, okay, it's time for us to really be serious, because here are people my age who went on the streets, they paid with their lives, and they're not here anymore. So it was a wake-up call.
Okay, a few comments we're gonna read before we wrap up.
This one hasn't answered.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
well,
ahead before I read the
I've
comments.
said
Yeah.
I voted in 2022, but I'll say that when I voted, a lot of people would even ask me like, Sheila, why are you voting? I remember when I registered to vote, people would ask me, Sheila, why are you voting? But I think the switch that has happened is that we are also imagining a better future. And sometimes I think, imagine if just healthcare and education worked in Kenya. Like, just relieve us of the burden of paying school fees, of paying that high tuition, and relieve us of that burden of paying high medical bills. We can put that money to like real functional businesses that can take this country very far. So that has also been a switch that has, I know it has flipped for many people. Like, if things worked,
life would be so much
it would be
easier.
like, Kenya is such a beautiful country.
Wow.
If things actually worked, I think Americans would be coming to Kenya for a
They're
better
already coming.
opportunity.
They're already coming.
They're already there.
They're there.
There's
They're
something
there.
they see
They're
there.
there.
Let me say this. You know, when you look at the more Kenyans get educated, thanks to the Gen Z movement, 625, 2024.
Yes.
How
absolutely.
people
Yeah.
started getting to learn stuff.
Yes.
When you understand that you going to the hospital and not getting treated or not getting medicine or not getting seen and or not getting properly diagnosed is because of the people you've
The
put
government.
in power.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
That
understanding,
understanding, yes.
that trigger.
It's not because you didn't work hard
no.
in life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We
Because
made
you're-
a couple
una-
mistakes.
Unachapa ushuru,
Yes.
you are being taxed like a nonsense.
Yeah.
But that, once that thing really locks in, like, you know, like how sometimes you're doing an assembly of an item,
Yeah.
and then you're plugging in and you just hear the click,
Yeah.
iko sawa, iko solid.
Yes.
When that happens,
And that cannot be reversed now.
it's a wrap.
Yeah. It's
Can I add something
Yes.
to what you're saying? Another thing we don't see is these small grants that the government is giving us. You hear of a Hustler Fund, you hear of a 50K here, 50K
Yeah.
there,
Women's
to start a
fund,
business.
youth fund, yeah.
For me, those are bribes. Those
Kabisa.
are, those are bribes.
poverty nini.
Exactly.
Those are poverty circles. You never
What-
leave them. Hizo ni
At
ka paid
50K.
What business are you
Hustler Fund
gonna
was
start?
500, Bob.
Okay, Apple.
Yeah.
But what business are you gonna start with that small amount of money that's going to sustain anything?
should
And then
ask
you're
us,
giving this money to a population that can barely afford the cost of living. They know that you're going to use this money to sustain yourself.
Yes.
Because there's even no mechanism of report to me which business you started. There's no mechanism like that.
Yeah.
You see Oscar Sudi handing out those smoky cards and what have you, making sure that people
Very
are
embarrassing.
constricted to these very small businesses that are unsustainable. When you could consolidate those funds, give out a grant, even if you give maybe 10, 20 industrial companies, let those companies grow with that money, and then they can employ for you the 50,000 people. But you give me 50K, I'm a sole proprietor. If I get sick, my business is dead.
Yes. Or
Imagine-
training people to
Yeah.
be mboches in Saudi
If
Arabia.
we
That
imagine,
is so. That's
if we-
like modern day.
It's
slavery.
literally
Right.
modern day
if
slavery.
we imagine the guys who are given wheelbarrows.
I know.
Eh-heh.
Yeah, I know.
That's so many
Yeah.
comments.
Let me read a couple of comments here before we wrap up. Kenyanjui anasema, Kenyanjui for the first time giving a positive comment. Anasema, this Ali guy is clearly well read. Thank you so much, Kenyanjui. I've been waiting for this moment since you started.
He
Don't be
needs
too
to give,
happy. Don't be happy.
he
Don't
needs to
be too
return
happy.
his phone to the
Hapana,
that,
no.
rudisha simu kwa
Simu
mwenye simu.
imeibiwa.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
that
then-
that wasn't him.
Yeah, and then Washeke anasema Iranians are Persians. Kenyanjui anasema joy. As a research scientist, you have to concede your friends represent a very small statistical sample. Kenyanjui is very
But it
tough.
was just an example.
Yeah, it was an example.
Kenyanjui
Kenyanjui
ni
be easy.
Mudiambo.
And
Kenyanjui be easy.
mwalimu wa math huyo.
Alafu Kenyanjui anasema, Ali, let me just say, you really light up when sharing insights on Islam. It's clear you're both well informed and genuinely passionate about the subject. Let me say something about
And he's
this.
also a
a bit.
subject matter expert. Because
Let me say something about this. I think as I've grown older, you know, like, because you know, like when we are young, we're taken to
Gaidi.
madrasa, we're taken to madrasa. We study the Quran. You know, like as I've grown older, you know, like I've studied it now better to understand it better and to know it better. And I think that, you know, like there's some very profound things that I discovered as a grown up that just reading it through as a young person or as a child when I was going to madrasa, I did not get it. And I think that's why in Islam we're encouraged to keep reading it constantly, again and again, because every time you read it, so there's some very interesting. And I used to be very argumentative on certain things, but then when now you read with a clear mind, and I encourage people to do this also with the Bible. You know, like I highly encourage that. I know it's a very controversial statement to make.
No, you're right on point. Because
but I highly encourage people to do that outside, you know, like the personalities that have hijacked the faith, because I feel like Christianity is a good faith that has been hijacked by so many different people to the point that now even people are not, you know, like willing to go seek the truth. Yeah, because it's been hijacked, it's been misused. And I think that that's why it's at a crisis level. So yeah, so 𝘽𝙤𝙤𝙗𝙤, this is something that I've grown into. I was not necessarily always like this, but I appreciate you pointing that out. And then Skylar Nasema, Ali, maybe I missed something. Are Kenyan Muslims predominantly Sunni or Shia? Kenyan Muslims are 99%. There's a very small percentage of Shias. They're there, but I would say maybe 1 or 2%. Kenyan Muslims are predominantly Sunni. And I would say, you know, like the difference between Sunni and Shia is not the difference between Protestants and Catholics. It's a very small difference. It's a difference based on a disagreement that happened. Who inherits the... It's a disagreement that happened when the Prophet died. You know, the first Khalifa was Abu Bakr. So there were 4 rightly guided Khalifas: Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. So the Shias follow Ali. They believe Ali should have been the first Khalifa.
And Ali not Badawi.
Not Badawi.
Okay.
Yeah, not Mjukuu Masai. Yeah, no. Yeah. So,
not Gaidi.
Yeah, so they believe that Ali should have been the first Khalifa. And the other thing is that because he was he was related to the Prophet. So they believe in that. And the Prophet did not, or rather the Quran has not explicitly prohibited, you know, like succession. So the succession, it has not prohibited succession based on lineage. And it has also not said that it has to be based on lineage. But now with the Shiites, they closed only on that part, that it has to be based on lineage. And
so
that was the disagreement. So there's certain theological differences here and there on certain small issues, but it's not like Catholics and Protestants. The difference is
huge.
Yeah, huge. The difference to an outsider, they may not even see any difference between
because I think the one who recommended that documentary, and I think it was on PBS, between the rivalry between Iran and Iraq. Between the Sunnis and the Shias. Anyway, it's a very interesting.
Yes. And a lot of the rivalries were manufactured by Europeans when they came in. You know what the same thing they did in Africa. They usually study and they know that this group and that group. It's the same thing. Notice that all these countries in the Middle East, they made sure where they drew the borders, there was a mix of Sunnis and Shias, just like the way they cut up the Somalis. They made sure, the Rwandese people, some of them are in Congo. This was very deliberate. It was very deliberate to sow seeds of discord and to bring in rivalry. This was very, very deliberate. These are populations that lived next to each other, but it was done very deliberately, and that's why I always say it's very embarrassing when a former cabinet minister, I'm not going to mention his name because he passed away, when he was saying, you know, history is a very useless subject. You know, it behooves me when I hear, you know, like senior government officials or people of influence.
He was arrested. So what would happen if you mention
people no, you know, like wacha ende akadili huko na kama yuko kama tenda peponi
Malakul Maut,
ama kama Malakul Maut tayari alishakutana naye,
amekutana naye
baada ya Malakul Maut
harvest,
baada ya Malakul Maut unaingia adhabul kabr.
Atio
unaingia
adhabul qadr,
adhabul kabr. Hiyo ni adhabu ya kaburini. Na wahenga wamesemaje?
Kilicho na mwanzo hakina budi kuwa na mwisho. Meli imetia nanga. We are about to wrap this puppy up. Mika,
Unapenda kurapi papi sana.
Wacha. Unajua majenzi hawajanyita hiyo joke, sasa hiyo ni sawa. Acha tuacha tu.
Mikasi. Endelea tu please.
Hapana, si ni kweli amependa kurapi papi sana.
Jenzi wamefloat boss.
Endelea kabla wa nini waelewe nini. Yeah, Mika.
Hey, today is the first day of summer. Mlikuwa mnajua hivyo?
Yeah, I know.
Huh?
I know. June 25th.
Okay, wait a minute.
It's
It's
tomorrow.
actually
No,
not
today's the
Wednesday.
20th.
It's a 20. Oh, it's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. Yes.
Okay, so we still have 38
So
minutes.
tomorrow is the longest day.
Huh?
It's the longest day of the year.
Oh.
Yes. Kwani we GHC ulikuwa kilala?
Yeah, June 25th.
GHC.
Yeah.
Kwani walilanji eti?
Yeah.
GHC.
Ama hiyo kufunzwa GHC au kama I know it. December. Huyu hapa learned that old ancient system.
Alikuwa
Okay.
anatumia the moon and the stars and the skies. Mika out.
Walikuwa wanafanya GC.
Mika.
Hawakuwa na history yao.
We had geographical conditions.
History wana create history.
I don't like any of you
Anyway.
guys.
First day of summer.
Mm-hmm.
People outside, people enjoying themselves. I just want to say that it's been a nice conversation today.
Thank you for our guests for coming to us. Thank you for wachangiaji for changiaring kama kawaida. And I just want to tell people like it's summertime. Everybody's gonna be out. Everybody's enjoying time with their family. Be careful. There's a new strain of COVID has come back. So
Boy.
take care of yourselves and also take your people next to you. The political situation in this country is funny. So be your brother's keeper. And take care and be blessed. Kwaheri.
Right. DJ Omoshfire.
Thank you to my fans. My fans, my peoples, and like Mikasi said, summer is here. And Ali, I hear we're not here next weekend.
No, we're not gonna be here next weekend.
But why aren't we here next week?
Cape Fear Rugby Sevens.
Say that again in English.
Cape Fear Rugby Sevens.
Okay, just checking. So, my fans, mumesikia, we're not here next Friday. We're going to be going for Cape Fear Rugby Sevens. It's actually a family fun event. And some of us will be representing. Kuna wale wakwenda last year, so this year ni kama wanaenda kurepresent juu au ndio walikuwa hapo 625.
Oh yeah, Mandamano kept us here.
Is it 3 out of 4 going or 4 out of 4? But we'll figure out.
We'll figure out when we get there.
We'll figure out to Kombele.
Yeah.
Anybody who's got hotel rooms for me, please call me on the side. Yeah. So have a good week. Please be careful. Summertime, some things happen. Bikes, CG cars, CG flying I don't know where, CG driving at. Just let's stay alive until winter. How about that? Okay. See you guys in 2 weeks. We'll be back and we'll
surprise. Bonge la surprise
July. You know, a July surprise is coming. We can't reveal it right now. Yeah, bonge la surprise. Lakini mgoja July. Yeah.
Haya.
So hata Sheila na Joy, you guys stay tuned. There's a bonge la surprise coming on the OneMic.
So our wakaerido. Oh, sorry. How do you say it in the new language? Maido. Okay. I don't know.
Aya, sawa. Joy, you said that give us your parting shot. You said 3 hours. It is very long.
You've been here in a very hot studio, and I must apologize.
Apologies, yeah.
Yani,
I don't know whether it was because of the conversation ama ilikuwa, but anyway.
It's a conversation.
It's both.
Yeah,
it's both.
She has drank like about 5 bottles of water.
It's both. And
5.
Somebody decided to turn the AC off. Let's just say it that way.
Nasi career 5 bila breaks. That's 5.
And you know what I like about Sheila and Joy is that they have convictions. And they don't back down. They're not
and they stand by it.
Which is one thing I like about this younger population. They're not into being politically correct, which I think, you know, like
and that's
our
exactly
generation
will help.
They were trying to tell
it
us.
will help moving forward.
Yeah, which is good. Which is what has, you know, like now given us this gap that we have in Kenya.
How about Banduki?
Sheila, give us your parting shot.
Joy.
I meant Joy.
Sheila Joy. Ni sawa. Unaweza kuwa Sheila Joy.
Say Joy.
No, she's
Ah,
not
we'll
backing
go-
down.
we'll go-
She's
we'll-
not
we'll-
backing down.
We'll go back.
down.
We'll go
She's-
back and
she's-
check.
We'll check
We'll
the
go back. We'll
run
go.
the
We'll
clips
rewind.
Hold
back.
on. Let me do a rewind.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Parting shot is let's continue being politically aware. And at the end of the day, let's remember the point is to improve our country and to advocate for human rights. At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, when all the noise calms down, our mission is to have a better country that we don't have to leave and be in other countries, where we can live safely with our families and our children and pursue our dreams without having to leave. That is the goal. So we should always remind ourselves in all of our conversations, how is this useful for building our country? Because it's easy to get distracted by so many conversations, but the mission is, how do we make Kenya a livable country so that people have decent lives? They don't have to beg. They don't have to be lose their dignity because they don't have a good way of life. That's the point, and that's something that we should never forget.
All right. Asante sana, Joy. Sheila, was it
Yeah.
3 hours too long?
No, it went
I thought
very
you were gonna call
fast.
her Joy.
Yeah?
Carry on.
No.
I'm just
no.
joking.
I think for me, I'll just echo what Joy said. It's very important for us to still remain politically engaged with what's happening in Kenya. We are at a pivotal moment where we could change our country for the best. So it's very important. Just because you live in the diaspora doesn't mean these things affect you. A lot of your money goes back home simply
Yes.
because systems don't work back home, and that's why you
Absolutely.
need to keep putting that money there. So if Kenya worked, you might not need to put your money there. If Kenya worked, I know a lot of people, sisemi kwa ubaya, but I know a lot of people just live in the US because they have to, not because they want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Many people, yeah.
On that note, I'd like to invite you to a vigil that we're having on the 28th of June at the Elimu Community Center, which is in Baltimore. We're going to be remembering our fallen heroes. It's a 3-hour event. It starts from 4 to 7. All ages are welcome. Come with your flags, come with your candles, and let's just remember what happened last year and come together.
Okay. Asante sana, Sheila. Thank you so much, Joy, for coming through. This was an amazing episode. You know, this is the first time I think we're hosting, because we've hosted young Kenyans before, but it's young Kenyans who are, born and raised in the US. Kina Net.
And
and,
Rehema.
Yeah, Kina Rehema. Yeah, so it's
Mwiko.
so it's good to get those perspectives, from young Kenyans who are fresh from Kenya and still have that perspective, because I think it's a perspective that we sometimes miss,
Forget.
because the Kenyans who are born here, they have their own perspective.
Oh, they have a
Yeah, I'm sure you've interacted with them. They have their own perspective and they have their own view in the way they look at Kenya. You guys are a bit more vested. You were there more recently and you travel back, so it's a very nice, fresh, interesting perspective. So we're gonna have another episode. Hapa Kinyanjui bado anauliza, anasema, Ali, it would be great if the show held an FAQ segment where we could ask questions about Islam. Every time you speak, I realize how little I actually know, and that much of what I thought I knew was probably just stereotypes. So I think this is something that we can give thought, and I don't blame anyone, because there was a deliberate campaign for so many years, from 9/11, even before 9/11, but from 9/11 it took
got
another
worse,
level.
yeah.
There were funded campaigns to demonize Muslims. So a
Oh,
lot of
yeah,
this,
yeah.
a lot of this information that people got, be it from mainstream media or whatever, it was based on a paid for campaign. What I like about this new generation is that they don't just take anything at face value. You're telling me these guys are bad. Okay, what did they do?
No, interrogate
Yeah.
your
They
thoughts.
interrogate,
You're
yes.
telling me all of these people are just bad.
all
like,
of them. This
not
whole
even
group.
one of them is
Yeah.
good.
This
Yeah.
whole group, what did they all do together? Because that doesn't even make sense. So I think that's the reason why, and that's the reason why I look at this generation as a generation that may rescue us of so many, inherited hate that people have, where you're hating someone from another tribe for no reason. You know, just because you found people in your community saying stuff about them, so now automatically you want to label everyone in that community, or people who are from here, or people who are from there. So I'm glad, I hope that thing will go away, because I think with the amplification by social media, it has amplified that hate. And that's the reason why you see people get to a point where they go assassinate leaders, in like what happened in Minnesota. Yeah. That is just someone who was so caught up in
The hatred.
in a rabbit hole, to a point where he felt, now I need to pick up a weapon and go kill a few bad people. You know, that's what
Or
happens.
supposedly bad people.
Yeah. That you know, that's what happens. And I think this is, you know, like another very important piece of education that young people should be receiving now who are in school, is just how to process information. Because I think that's one thing that was never, because from where we came from, information used to be scarce, so it was like consume everything that you find. But now there's bombardment of information from all kinds of sources, unprocessed information, and now that's where
Even
you get
false
people
so much
false information, exaggerated information, and now you have people like hating other groups of people for no specific reason. Na kwa hayo machache, yeyote ambaye anataka kunipigia simu, nambari yangu bado ni ile ile 1-800 mteule. Operator akishika simu, mwambie unataka kusema na mjukuu, na akikuuliza ni mjukuu yupi, mkumbushe ni mjukuu yule yule wa Masai, because I'm Kenyan by blood, American by design, Masai by choice. Sichagui, sikagui na sibagui. Kwaherini.
Aidan, Daddy loves you. Njari, Daddy loves you. Nimo, Daddy loves you. Until next week, or 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks
Well,
from
until
now.
the next time.
Is it 2 or 3 weeks? Because the other
3
week is
weeks,
July 4th.
July 4th.
Yeah. So
Oh.
until July 11th.
July 11th.
So you guys, Poleni, you'll have to find something to do with your Fridays. So we
Yes.
love you so much.
July 11th.
Yeah.
Ndio tunarudi.
But we won't be back here until July 11th.
Be blessed. Machachari.
Kilo unatafuta utakipata, bidi to fight on your partner, itakubidi to fight on your partner, itakubidi to fight on your partner, itakubidi kilo unatafuta utakipata. Futa app ya kujua WhatsApp, wacha kura aijimaliza, ingia WhatsApp, nategea gidha zako, siweza kupiga nap, natokora hizo apps, tanipataji kwa map, cheki niko to fight on your partner, up to the sky, kuna drone na kufuata, na hapa kwa hapa naona mahaga, wewe unataka ndogo ndogo, bigi bigi doshi unavuka mipaka, hapa ni bigi ndio na bigi, mwambie wa super wako kijiji mindo bibi, naidigi za kwa wingi na kidigi nuru itosha, hapo unapigaji firimbi.
Happy itakubidi to fight on your partner, 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 itakubidi to fight on your partner,
itakubidi to fight on your partner, itakubidi to fight on your partner, itakubidi to fight on your partner, itakubidi kilo unatafuta utakipata.
Kuchanganya mabali na changa juu ya bali chaga changa wakanta kregete toke nyaga mini kalwa ukamna madeni kilimani center Mr. Munga Njaro deadly glory since manza was younger hadi line of visit na kuitisha namba hakuna cha credit kimcrash na kubamba na sikia mbinguni tunapata mwili mpya baba darling Some nigga darker, darling.